So now we come to chapter 3. Naimittika-dharma is to be relinquished. One night, just after 10 o'clock, Sannyasi Maharaj sat chanting Harinam on the raised mound in a secluded part of his grove within Sri Godrum. Gazing northward, he saw the full moon had already risen, diffusing an uncommon luster throughout Sri Navadvip Mandal. Suddenly, a divine manifestation of nearby Sri Mayapur became visible before his eyes. Sannyasi Maharaj exclaimed, "Oh, what an extraordinary vision! I am seeing a most astonishing and blissful holy place. Towering jeweled palaces, temples, and ornamented archways are illuminating the banks of the Jahnavi River by their glittering splendor. The tumultuous sound of Harinam Sankirtan is rising from many places, as if to pierce the sky. Hundreds of Vaishnavas, like Narad playing upon his veena, are chanting Sri Nam and dancing." I was sharing with the devotees last year during our Gora Parikrama how when sometimes here in Navadvip, especially during Gora Panim time when there are so many Parikrama parties around, and sometimes all of the sounds come together, especially at the Sandhya time, at the Gora Arti time. Sometimes maybe 7 or 8 different temples will all be chanting the Gora Arti simultaneously, and the sound vibration is really dramatic, and it makes us feel that it's almost piercing the sky with the sweetness and beauty and power of this holy name, this Harinam Sankirtan. So we can physically experience this sound vibration here in Goradam at times like this. And this gives great faith to the practicing sadhak that he can connect with Mahaprabhu, who is always so powerfully present here in the atmosphere of Navadvip Dham. And devotees should visit here regularly. Even if they can't stay here, they should visit regularly and taste and experience the mercy directly of Mahaprabhu in Gordam. So Sannyasi Thakur, he's having a transcendental vision of this, a spurti of this, and he's seeing the beautiful temples and hearing the Vaishnavas dancing and singing, etc. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as we all know, is a most mystical personality himself. He's revealed in many of his writings these mystical visions to give encouragement to the devotees that yes, these visions are accessible, and sometimes this type of mercy can be bestowed by Krishna directly, that we'll see something and we'll have a feeling that this is, yes, from another realm, from the transcendental realm. And this will increase our faith in the apricot realm, in the transcendental realm, therefore diminish our putting so much emphasis and importance on this material world, and we'll more easily become liberated from this material condition, which is exactly what's going to happen to Sannyasi Thakur. By having this revelation, he's going to become liberated from, first of all, his dress as a sannyasi and his whole consciousness of being a Brahmagyani devout follower. On one side is fair-complexioned Mahadev with his Damaru drum in his hand. He cries out, "O Vishvambar, please bestow your mercy upon me." Saying this, he dances Tandava Nritya wildly, then falls to the ground unconscious. On another side, the four-headed Brahma sits in an assembly of rishis who are well versed in Vedic lore. He recites the following Vedic mantra and lucidly explains its meaning. Mahan Prabhu Mahaprabhu Vaipumsa Sarva Sattva Yasva Pravartaka Shunimaralam Imam Praptim Ishano Joiti Avyaya. Sweta Upanishad 3:12. That personality is undoubtedly Mahan, supreme, and he is Prabhu, master. He bestows the tendency for intelligence, and by his mercy, a person can attain supremely pure and transcendental peace. That person, known as Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya, is Purush, the supreme person. He is Ishan, the supreme ruler. He is Jyoti Swarup, the self-manifest and possessing a lustrous effulgence. Due to the golden splendor of his limbs, he is Avyaya, the imperishable Lord. So Lord Brahma, he's discussing the beauties of Mahaprabhu in reference to the Vedic Shastra, to the Vedic descriptions of Mahaprabhu, and how much can we spend our time and life discussing the beauty and speciality of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu's glories are endless. Elsewhere, Indra and other devas are leaping in ecstasy, crying, Jai Prabhu, Gaurachandra, Jai Nityananda. The birds sitting on the branches of the trees are calling out, Gaura, Nitai. Large black bees are humming everywhere in the flower gardens, intoxicated by drinking Gaura Nam Ras, the liquid essence of the holy name of Gaura. Prakriti Devi, the goddess of nature, is maddened with Gaura Ras and diffusing her magnificent radiance everywhere. This is one. Excuse me. This is wonderful. I have seen Sri Mayapur in broad daylight many times, but I've never beheld anything like this before. What am I seeing? How astonishing. Sannyasi Thakur is really developing so quickly his Krishna consciousness. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's crafting this text to reveal that the process can work so quickly if we take it really seriously, if we become detached from this material world and take the precepts very seriously. Remembering his Gurudev, Sannyasi Maharaj said, O Prabhu, now I can understand that you have bestowed your mercy upon me today by granting me a vision of the transcendental, aprakrit aspect of Mayapur. From today onwards, I shall call myself a follower of Sri Gaurachandra. I see that everyone in this divine land of Navadvip wears a necklace of tulsi beads, tilak on his forehead, and the letters of Sri Nam stamped on his body. I shall also do the same. So this is a whole transition Bhaktivinoda Thakur is sharing with us. Saying this is the effect that the philosophy, that transcendental knowledge can have on our very being, that a whole transition will take place in our lives completely, and we'll just embrace this process fully, 100%, leaving behind our previous years of material involvement. Just in a moment, this can happen when a vision is bestowed of this nature. Saying this, Sannyasi Maharaj fell into a state of unconsciousness. He regained external consciousness after a short while and began to cry. Indeed, I am extremely fortunate, for by the mercy of my Guru, I have obtained a momentary vision of the sacred land of Navadvip. He immediately gives credence to his Guru. This is why this can happen to Sannyasi Thakur, because he has got his Guru as most prominent. He understands this aspect. Straight away he was understanding this aspect, that Guru is the principle, because our habit previously to coming to Guru was to do everything independently, how we wanted to do it. But coming under guidance of Guru, what is it we have to offer to Guru? Ultimately, we have to offer our independent spirit to Guru. That's what we have to offer to Guru, to let Guru dictate and direct our wanderings in this material world. Guru will direct us because Guru has the same desire that Krishna has for us. Sakshat Davitre Nasamasta Shastre. We said this yesterday. Guru and Krishna are like one. They both desire the welfare of the conditioned soul. So if the Shishya is able to fully submit to Guru's guidance, this is the same as fully submitting to Krishna's guidance. Then only pure success and auspiciousness can come in the Shishya's life. Completely that can come, because then he's connecting fully with transcendence. If the Guru is transcendental, then he is connecting fully with transcendence. If the Guru is not transcendental, still great benefit will be there for the sadhak's mood. But if that Guru is not transcendental, then that will be revealed in time, and the Shishya will have no loss in his surrender to that fallen Guru, and he will just again beg for the mercy of Krishna to provide him with another Guru who can guide him. But for the Shishya, there's no problem. Nothing has been lost, because the sentiment of that surrender, that submissiveness by the Shishya to Guru, is what is going to count with the Supreme Lord. The next morning, he threw his Ekadanda staff into the river. Then, decorating his neck with a threefold stranded necklace of tulsi beads and his forehead with the Urdav Pundra Tilak mark, he chanted Hari Hari and began to dance. Many times devotees inquire, what is this Urdav Pundra Tilak? It's just the same tilak that we wear, that is given its full title here. That's all. You can look these words up in the glossary at the back. When the Vaishnavas of Godharam saw Sannyasi Maharaj's extraordinary mood and new appearance, they offered him prostrated obeisances, saying, "You are blessed, you are blessed." He became somewhat embarrassed at this and said, "Oh, I have accepted this Vaishnava dress to become an object of the Vaishnava's mercy. But now I have met with another obstacle. I have heard the following statement many times from Gurudev's mouth: Trinadapi sunichena, tarodapi suhishana, amanina manadena, kirtanya sadahari. This is from Shikshastikam 3. Considering oneself to be more insignificant than a blade of grass, being more tolerant than a tree, and free from all desire for personal prestige, and offering all respect to others, one should constantly be absorbed in Harinam. So now Vaishnava Sannyasi Thakur has to really demonstrate the true quality of a Vaishnav Atar. This is the word for describing the quality, Vaishnav Atar, of a Vaishnava. He must embrace this verse deeply. Srila Krishna's Kaviraj, he says we should actually have this carved in a locket around our necks and carry it, and constantly be remembering this verse in this world. And then we will be connected with that supreme potency, that supreme transcendental Lord. The symptom of the conditioned soul is pride. The conditioned soul is proud of everything. He's proud of his bank balance. He's proud of his family. He's proud of his car. He's proud of his shoes. He's proud of his hair. He's proud of everything. This is the nature of conditioned consciousness. Whereas the devotee is humble about everything that he knows he's not the owner of anything. He's utilizing any assets that have come to him in Krishna's name. And he's looking for this place of humility constantly. So there's such a marked distinction between the materialist and the Vaishnava. And this is the fundamental point of distinction. The very same Vaishnavas whom I consider to be my gurus are now offering obeisances to me. What will become of me? Pondering thus, he approached Paramahamsa Babaji, offered him prostrated obeisances, and stood up with his head bowed. Babaji Mahashai was seated in the Madhavi Arbor, chanting Harinam. When he saw Sannyasi Maharaj's complete change of dress and his awakening of bhav for Sri Nam, he embraced him and bathed him with tears of love, saying, "O Vaishnava Das, today I have become successful by touching your auspicious body." So what a beautiful description of initiation. We can say like Harinam initiation. He's just been given the name Vaishnava Das. What an extraordinary picture that Bhaktivinoda is painting for us to appreciate. This should be the condition when we come to devotional service. With that statement, Sannyasi Maharaj's previous name was forsaken. He received a new life from that day, was now known as Vaishnava Das. Thus he abandoned his Mayavad sannyas dress, his prestigious sannyas name, and the exalted conception he had of himself. Very important, very profound. This is a beautiful description that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving us today. That afternoon, many Vaishnavas came to Sri Pradumna Kunj from Sri Godram and Sri Madhyadweep to see Paramahamsa Babaji. They all sat surrounding him. Madhyadweep is right next to Godram Dweep. Godram Dweep is this island, and there's no river between Godram Dweep and Madhyadweep. There's Simanta Dweep in the north east of Godram, and then there's Godram, and then there's Madhyadweep. Then we cross over the Ganga, and then we come to Koladweep, and then Ritudweep, and then Janudweep, and then Modran and Rudradweep. They are all together on the other side of the Ganga. But on this side of the Ganga, there's Mayapur, but Mayapur is on the other side of the Jalangi, or the Saraswati River. But in this particular island of Godram, right next to it is Madhyadweep. And just a little bit to the east is Simantadweep. So these three islands are around here without rivers to cross to reach them. So the devotees from Madhyadweep, which is just 2 or 3 miles from here, very close by, they came. It's very interesting to see, because at this time, of course, there were no institutions like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati inaugurated. There was just groups of Vaishnavas living together out of affection for each other and out of a sincere desire to practice the precepts of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they were living somewhat communally, but there was no institutional community. They would live in rented places or just places that they had been given by various well-wishers and so on. And it's described how the local populace would bring them fruits and grains, whatever they needed if they were cooking, or they would provide them with the food they would beg from Madhukari. So it was a very, very simple arrangement and setup. And the focus was entirely on their Hari Nam Bhajan, on their chanting, on their kirtan, etc. This was the focus of these different groups. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes it in different places, how different groups of devotees would come. Sometimes he talks about the devotees coming from Nrsimhapali, sometimes coming from Koladweep or Kulinya Gram, and different places would come. So it's just an interesting picture we have of the devotional environment at this time. This was about 400 years ago. But today we've been evolved into different mats or sects, and for some there are many pluses about it, and also there's dangers in it as well. So we just have to navigate through this particular environment we have of the devotee arrangements. They all sat surrounding him, surrounding Paramahamsa Babaji, chanting Harinam with Tulsi Mala in their hands. They called out, "Ha Gauranga, Nityananda, Ha Sitanath, Ha Sachinandan," and their eyes welled with tears. The Vaishnavas discussed among themselves topics related to the confidential service of their Ishtadev, their worshipable deity, and then after circumambulating Tulsi Devi, they offered obeisances. At that time, Vaishnava Das also circumambulated Sri Vrinda Devi and rolled in the dust of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. Everything actually centers on Vrinda Devi. Vrinda Devi arranges all the meetings between Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. Radha and Krishna never ever meet without the arrangement of Vrinda Devi. Vrinda Devi is the principal personality arranging everything. Even when we chant on our Tulsi Mala, this is an aspect or a part of Vrinda Devi also. So we are connecting with the Supreme. So Vrinda Devi is paramount in our worship. So it's interesting how it's brought out that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning everyone was circumambulating Vrinda Devi. Very, very important. Vrinda Devi is the younger expansion of Yogamaya. Yogamaya is one tattva, but for pastime, she's two personalities. Purnamasi is the elder ascetic mahant of the village, and she will interact with all the villages, etc. Whereas Vrinda Devi just stays in the forest, like a Devi, like a goddess, and she doesn't interact with all of the other people of the village, with the gopis and the some of the sakhas, the Priyanam sakhas, but not everybody. So Vrinda Devi is a very selective, special person. So always we are thinking of our prayers towards getting the mercy of Vrinda Devi. Some of the Vaishnavas whispered to one another, "Isn't that Sannyasi Maharaj? What an extraordinary appearance he has today." Rolling on the ground before the Vaishnavas, Vaishnav Das said, "Today my life has become successful, for I have obtained the dust of the Vaishnavas' lotus feet. By Gurudev's mercy, I have clearly understood that the jiva has no destination unless he has the dust of the Vaishnavas' feet. The dust of the feet of the Vaishnavas, the water that washes their feet, and the nectar emanating from their lips. These three items are the medicine and the way of life for the patient who is afflicted with the disease of material existence." Very such important points. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, without the mercy of the Vaishnavas, nothing can proceed. Therefore, how important is it for us to respect the Vaishnavas and not criticize, which has become the habit greatly amongst the Vaishnavas sometimes. This criticism takes place, but this criticism has to be eradicated. It will not attract the mercy of Krishna in any way. It will send Krishna away. We must be very, very, very cautious about this. They are the cure for the entire material disease, and they are also the source of transcendental enjoyment for the healthy soul who has become free from this affliction. So in both cases, they will cure the disease and they will enhance the bliss of the practicing sadhak. So Vaishnava association and Sangha is absolutely vital for the sadhak desiring progress on this path. It doesn't mean that we need hundreds of Vaishnavas associations. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj has very beautifully said that to practice pure bhajan, you only need 3 or 4 Vaishnavas of a similar mood, in fact, to progress forward. If any other Vaishnavas are there and we can take their Sangha, that is wonderful. But we shouldn't be lamenting all the time, oh, there's no big Vaishnava Sangha here. If there's even 1 or 2, Swajatya, Snigdha, Ashraya, these 3 aspects we should look for. Swajatya, they have the same mood. They want the same essence that Mahaprabhu has come to give, for example. We want to go into the path of Raganuga Bhakti. If that is our desire, we need other souls who also have that inclination and that desire. Swajatya, same jat. Swa means own. Swajatya. Snigdha means affectionate. They have affectionate for us. We have affectionate for them. And then Ashraya, we have the feeling that they are more senior to us. This is very important. We always want to hold each other with due respect. This is so much necessary. So if we have this kind of Sangha, even with 2 or 3 or 4 devotees, that's sufficient to keep our practice on the boil, so to speak, to keep ourselves regularly inspired. We don't need a whole social circle. That can become very, very distracting, in fact. But if we have a few selective um, souls who we know are encouraging our bhajan, that is sufficient to go forward in our internal practice of bhajan, pure bhajan. Now Sannyasi Thakur, Vaishnava Das now, is going to speak. O Vaishnavas, please do not think that I am trying to show off my scholarship. My heart has now become free from all such egoism. I took birth in a high Brahmin family, studied all the Shastras, and entered the sannyas ashram, which is the 4th stage of the social order. As a result, my pride knew no bounds. He's enunciated everything. Very open-hearted, his plea to the Vaishnavas is. But when I became attracted to the Vaishnava principles, a seed of humility was sown in my heart. Gradually, through the mercy of all of you Vaishnavas, I've been able to cast off the vanity of my noble birth, the pride of my learning, and the arrogance of my social status. So appreciate all these points, just to drop our material social reputation when we come in front of the devotees. I can remember personally when I first came and first met a devotee, and he began to speak to me. I was very proud of the various, basically traveling I'd done in the world prior to coming to the company of devotees. And I started to show off to this Vaishnava who was preaching to me. And he just said a very simple expression. He said, "Oh, I did all that in my last life." That was all he said. And it cut me off totally. And I was able to be silent for the next 4 or 5 hours and just listen to what he had to say. So this is the process to silence our desire to, our arrogance or our pride, our vanity in our previous apparent accomplishments, and just listen to the katha of the Vaishnavas. Now I know that I am a destitute and insignificant jiva. I was being ruined by my false ego of being a brahmana, by my learning, and by my status as a sannyasi. I submit all this before your lotus feet with full simplicity. You may deal with this servant of yours however you deem fit. When the Vaishnavas heard Vaishnava Das's humble words, many of them said, O best of the Bhagavats, we are eager to obtain the dust of the feet of Vaishnavas like you. Please bless us with the dust of your lotus feet. You are the object of Paramahamsa Babaji's mercy. Please purify us by making us your associates. The Shastras say that bhakti is obtained through associating with bhaktas like yourself. Bhaktis tu bhagavat bhakta sangena parijayate satsanga prapyate pumbya sukritir purva sanchitaha. Brihan Naradiya Purana 433. Bhakti is awakened when one associates with bhaktas of Sri Bhagavan. Association with Shuddha bhaktas is attained only by the accumulation of transcendental pious activities performed over many lifetimes. This will be our great fortune, that whatever activities we perform in devotion is going to be accumulated and will remain with us in our next birth. This is why we can never think that a younger devotee is not necessarily advanced. A younger devotee may be carrying so much sukriti from a previous birth. All devotees should be internally respected and honored, but certainly those devotees who have been practicing the path materially in this life for some time should be given more respect than the apparent junior devotees. My Gurudev was always very clear about this etiquette of respect. By respect, it engenders potency. Respect is an aspect of love. We are trying to melt the heart in affection towards Krishna. All of these qualities really support that. Bhakti is awakened when one associates with bhaktas of Sri Bhagavan. Associating with Shuddha bhaktas is attained only by the accumulation of transcendental pious activities performed over many lifetimes. We had accumulated a sufficient stock of pious activities which foster bhakti, bhakti proshaka sukriti, and that is how we have obtained your association. Now, by the strength of that association, we aspire for Hari Bhakti. When the Vaishnavas had concluded their exchanges of mutual respect and humility, this is the point that I'm perceiving in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's words. This point of mutual respect and humility are absolutely like our platform to move forward. We have to cultivate this because many of us are coming from very poor respect or lacking in respect places. We're coming from poverty-stricken, proud homes, many of us. And how will we melt our hearts in this direction if we carry those negative traits from that previous lifestyle? They have to be purified. When the Vaishnavas had concluded their exchanges of mutual respect and humility, Vaishnavadas sat down on one side of the assembly, thereby enhancing its dignity. Harinam Mala looked brilliant in his hands. Interesting that Bhaktivinoda Thakur should comment on that. When you chant on your mala sufficiently, then it takes on almost a physical glow. And they were aware that Vaishnava Das was taking his Harinam Mala practice very seriously. That day, a fortunate gentleman was sitting with the Vaishnavas. He had taken birth in an aristocratic Brahmin family, and he was also a zamindar, a wealthy landlord. He had studied Arabic and Farsi from childhood and had developed a significant reputation in the country, for he had courted many of the Islamic royalty and was also expert in group dynamics and political strategy. Although he had enjoyed his position and opulence for many years, it had brought him no happiness. At last he had taken up the practice of Harinam Sankirtan. So now we're being introduced to another personality who we're going to sit with for the next few chapters. This is Lahari Mahashai, and this is something about his character that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is building here. It's the antithesis of what Vaishnava Das has just been through. So see the links between these personalities. First there's Prem Das Babaji, and then we have Sannyasi Thakur becomes purified. Now we're going to see that Sannyasi Thakur as Vaishnava Das, and he's going to be called Vaishnava Das Babaji, he will influence this person, Lahari Mahashai, and Lahari Mahashai is going to influence his son, Shambhu, and Devadrita, I think his name is, Devadatta. He's going to influence him later on in the later chapters. So it's a continuing line. This current is coming through the various Vaishnavas. In his childhood, the gentleman had been trained in Indian classical music by some of the most prestigious music masters of Delhi. Because of that training, he had become strong enough to put himself forward as the lead singer during the performances of Harinam Sankirtan. The Vaishnavas did not like his polished classical style of singing, for he would show off some of his musical artistry during Sankirtan, and then look expectantly at others' faces for recognition. He continued to lead kirtans for many days, and gradually he began to experience some pleasure in Sankirtan. After some time, he came to Sri Godram in order to join the kirtan programs of the Navadvip Vaishnavas, and he took up residence in the ashram of a Vaishnava there. On this particular day, accompanied by that Vaishnava, he had come to Pradumna Kunj and was sitting in that Malati Madhavi grove. When he saw the Vaishnavas' humble behavior towards each other and heard Vaishnava Das's words, many doubts arose in his mind. Being a skillful orator, he audaciously raised the following inquiry before the assembly of Vaishnavas. The Manusmriti and other Dharma Shastras state that the Brahman caste is the highest caste. According to these Shastras, religious rites such as Sandhya Vandanam, the chanting of the Vedic mantras such as Brahma Gayatri at dawn, noon, and sunset, are considered to be Nitya Karma, eternal duties for the Brahmanas. If these activities are obligatory, why is Vaishnava behavior opposed to them? So this is the question that is going to take up the rest of the chapter. So try to appreciate this question. Many smarta Brahmins today, they consider this to be the truth, that because I am born a Brahmana, because I practice the Gayatri mantras 3 times a day, etc., that I am considering myself more worthy of respect. But Lahari Mahashai had just seen the behavior of the Vaishnavas, so his pride had already been punctured to some degree. So now it's described as audaciously, because the Vaishnavas only want to talk about Krishna, but he's asking this question like a challenge way. It's like a challenging question. Why do the Vaishnavas only, are they disrespecting the Brahman caste? So this question is very prevalent, especially in Bharatvarsh, especially in India. The Brahmins believe that they have their superior birth, they expect respect. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to purify this misconception. The Vaishnavas have no taste for mundane argument and debate. If the question had been put by an argumentative Brahmana, they would not have replied, for fear of becoming embroiled in a battle of words. However, since they saw that the present questioner regularly sang Harinam, they all said, "We will be most happy if Paramahamsa Babaji Mahashai answers your question." On hearing the order of the Vaishnavas, Paramahamsa Babaji Mahashai offered obeisances and said, "O great souls, if you so desire, the respected Bhakta Sri Vaishnava Das will answer this question in full." All the Vaishnavas consented to this proposal. So I think we'll stop there today and continue with the exceptional answer that Vaishnava Das is going to give to this question. But try to understand the question very clearly. I'm just going to repeat the question one more time for us to consider in the next, because we won't be meeting tomorrow. We'll meet again on Monday. So the question: the Manusmriti and other Dharma Shastras state that the Brahman caste is the highest caste. So this is Shastra is saying specifically the Brahman caste is the highest. Lahari Mahashai is a Brahmana. He wants to maintain his status. He doesn't want to give up his material status. According to these Shastras, religious rites such as Sandhya Vandana, the chanting of the Vedic mantras such as Brahma Gayatri at dawn, noon, and sunset, are considered to be Nitya Karma, eternal duties for the Brahmanas. In other words, the Brahmanas, they have this wealth, this treasure that they can practice, which is not what the general mass of people have. If these activities are obligatory, why is Vaishnava behavior opposed to them? So he's considering that because Sannyasi Thakur has just said that he's left all his prestigious mood of um, learning, etc., his pride in my learning, cast off my vanity of my noble birth. Lahari Mahashai was pricked at this. He's cast off the idea that he was a Brahmin by birth. He's not carrying that anymore. Understand, all of these um, aspects of our apparent material reputation have to be purified down to the very core. So Mahashai, Lahari Mahashai, is giving the question where these can be, this aspect of reputation can be purified. For the devotee living in the Western world, we don't have to face this problem. Nevertheless, we have other difficulties with our pride that we have to face. So this is very, very educational. So on Monday, we'll churn over the answer to this beautiful question. Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So, just in recap where we are, we're in the third chapter. We're on to page 35 today. And this chapter is titled Naimittika-dharma to be relinquished. And it's a wonderful crafting that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is performing here. He started off this chapter with the spurti for Vaishnava. He was Sannyasi Thakur when he saw the spurti. That spurti took him right out of himself because he was aware of the absolute truth of transcendence when he saw those temples and heard the Harinam party, saw Narad, etc. He was completely taken right off the bodily platform. And when he was off the bodily platform, then he understood the futility completely of the bodily platform. Then he could reject any remnant of this Naimittika-dharma left within him, which, as he describes, was his arrogance, his, what else was it? His liberated form and his high opinion of himself. He was able to relinquish this Naimittika-dharma of his own traits that he was carrying, so to speak, because he had appreciated transcendence. So with that ivichrata, we've just described it in the verse, that astonishing vision that he'd had was sufficient to take him right away from the bodily conception. And when he was sitting back sufficiently, then he could see the futility of anything connected with this material world and what is Naimittika-dharma. Then he was able to relinquish it. It's amazing how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he starts this chapter with this spurti of Sannyasi Thakur to show how merciful Krishna can sometimes be in granting a vision of that nature. Because Sannyasi Thakur was a really hardcore Nirvishesh Brahmavad prior, or Mayavad, prior to meeting Prem Das Babaji. So something of this, and because he was so clean in a sense of not breaking any regulative principles and not dishonoring Vaishnavas, up to that point, he hadn't met any Vaishnavas. So he hadn't committed any Vaishnava aparad. So therefore he was able to perceive, just like the four Kumaras, they didn't commit any Vaishnava aparad. So they were able to actually go right to Vaikuntha. When Vaishnava aparad is there, then everything is closed off. Then you can't progress. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is opening this chapter with this example of Sannyasi Thakur seeing the vision and then giving up his Ekadas Danda, and his giving up his arrogance, his pride, and his sense of his reputation, just able to give all this is really what Naimittika-dharma constitutes of. Just like the gopis, they dropped every material consideration conceivable They even dropped their material shyness. They dropped their material fear of the dark night to go out and meet with Krishna. They dropped their reputation. They dropped everything. They dropped their whole attachments to any family whatsoever. Like these gross and subtle encumbrances that we travel with, that we have, the bodily attachments and the subtle attachments, the subtle attachments of, yes, yes, and reputation, etc. These are all in that area. So they were able just to walk away from that Naimittika-dharma towards that transcendental entity, Sri Krishna. So all of our teachings are like that. Bhagavad Gita is like, it's the same thread again and again and again, leaving this Naimittika-dharma behind. And now we've reached a point right now where Lahari Maharshi is going to go through the same process, and he's also going to leave all his preconceived ideas, because his conceived ideas was this of the Sandhya Vandanam mantras chanted for the Brahmanas. He's feeling very much attached to his position as a Brahmana, and he's feeling with that pride and so on, and his apparent wealth, material knowledge and so on, his virtuoso as a musician, etc. All of this, he's also going to leave all this behind. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going very, very deeply here. What is Naimittika-dharma? Because unless you know what it is, how can you relinquish it? So he's making it very clear on these pages. And now Vaishnava Das, he's no longer Sannyasi Thakur. He even gave up his name, etc., and took the name of Vaishnava, or given the name Vaishnava Das. So now he is going to become like the Babaji. And in chapter 4, he will be instructing directly Lahari Maharshi. And then we see again, Lahari Maharshi will become Advaita Das Babaji, and he will be instructing Devi Das, his son. So it's going like that. It's the line, it's the continuum. This is how bhakti is transferred from guru to disciple, from guru to disciple. Like this is the line, and it has to be like that. So this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is demonstrating here on these pages about what is the nature of this Naimittika-dharma. So on page 35 now at the top, on hearing the order of the Vaishnavas, Paramahamsa Babaji Maharshi offered obeisances and said, O great souls, if you so desire, the respected Bhakta Sri Vaishnava Das, he's calling him now a respected Bhakta. Sometimes I know we use the word loosely, say, oh, I know in temples, etc., we say, oh, he's Bhakta Jack or something. But actually being a Bhakta is the highest title somebody can have, is to be a Bhakta. That's the most wonderful title. So he's calling him a Bhakta here. He's saying, respected Bhakta, Sri Vaishnava Das, will answer this question in full. All the Vaishnavas consented to this proposal. When Vaishnava Das heard the words of his Gurudev, he considered himself most fortunate and humbly said, I am wretched and insignificant. It is completely inappropriate for me to say anything in such a learned assembly. Nevertheless, I must always bear the order of my Gurudev upon my head. I have drunk the nectar of spiritual instructions flowing from my Guru's lotus mouth. I shall remember that and speak as far as my ability allows. So this is like his Mangalacharya. He's glorifying his Gurudev who's sitting in front of him. And he's glorifying all the assembled Vaishnavas. He's saying like Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha. And I've said previously, unless we invoke the mercy of the higher order of that transcendental place, how can we possibly offer any transcendental instruction? It won't be, because the connection is one of submissive humility towards that realm. And in our Mangalacharyan, that's what we're evoking, that's what we're trying to bring. So always remember, when someone's speaking to you and asking you a question, if it's a serious question, then you have to invoke the mercy of your Gurudev, the mercy of the Guru Parampara, the mercy of Sachinandan Gaura Hari. And then you will find, you'll be just amazed. Then what can happen is so many impressions we've had, and perhaps we don't remember them all materially, but when we start to speak spiritually, all those doors will just open up, and we'll be able to just deliver some very potent instruction. Nevertheless, I must always bear the order of my Gurudev upon my head. I have drunk the nectar of spiritual instructions flowing from my Guru's lotus mouth. I shall remember that and speak as far as my ability allows. Having smeared his entire body with the dust of the lotus feet of Paramahamsa Babaji, he then stood up and began to speak. So such a humble mood and attitude is going to attract the mercy of the Vaishnavas instantly. And if the Vaishnavas are attracted, Sri Krishna is attracted. What's that? Aham bhakta parodino yashvatantra idvajija. That Krishna himself is saying to Durvasa, I stay in that place where the bhaktas are. Yes. So now he starts to speak. Sri Krishna Chaitanya is the source of all different types of expansions and avatars. So we start at the top. He is directly Bhagavan himself, full of transcendental bliss. So we get confident of where he's going. He's connecting with Mahaprabhu. The all-pervading, featureless Nirvishesh Brahm is the effulgence of his limbs, and Paramatma, who resides in the hearts of all jivas, is his partial expansion. May he be pleased to enlighten us from within. Manu Samhita and other Dharma Shastras are respected throughout the world because they establish the codes of prohibition that follow the line of thought of the Vedic Shruti Shastras. Human nature has two tendencies in regard to religious pursuit. So he's just touched on the prohibitions. That means, that indicates Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti, the sadhak is conditioned by the mood of fear because he doesn't want to break the prohibitions. These are the parameters that the Vaidhi Bhakta lives in. He has the prohibitions of Shastra he takes very seriously, and he thinks if he transgresses them, then there's no way that he can actually attain any level of transcendental consciousness. So he's bounded by these prohibitions, but that means he's motivated by fear. It's a fearful state for the consciousness. This is how Vaidhi Bhakti is described. Whereas the opposite of Ragmarg, greed and enthusiastic mood, this is Lob. This is the generating influence of Ragmarg. It's quite different. Human nature has two tendencies in regard to religious pursuit. The first is called Vaidhi, the nature which impels one to follow the rules and regulations of Shastra, and the second is Raganuga, the nature which impels one to follow the soul's spontaneous attraction towards Krishna. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is laying it on the line immediately. He's not going to run with an idea of just Vaidhi Bhakti as the principle, but straight away, just in this third chapter, he's delineating the distinction between the two. This is the first time he's done it so far. But this is going to continue all the way through because this is the gift of Mahaprabhu. Rag Mag Bhakti Loke, Kori Te Prachan. He's come to give the world Raganuga Bhakti. That's what he's come for. He hasn't come to give Vaidhi Bhakti. My Gurudev often says, Advaita Acharya, he could give this, but he doesn't. As long as the intelligence is under the control of Maya, human nature must be regulated by rules and prohibitions. Thus, in this condition, the Vaidhi nature will certainly be in effect. That means fear. Vidimag Rata Jane, Swadinata Ratna Dane, Rag Mag Karuna Pravesh. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is singing this in the Kalyana Kalpataru poems. This means that when the Vidhi marg has been followed carefully, then Krishna bestows the jewel of independence upon the jiva. The jiva is already independent, but that independent nature to want to serve Krishna in a completely liberated, loving way will wake up in the heart. When that wakes up in the heart, all support from the Guru Vargya will come and manifest and guide him very clearly. If it's a sincere desire to do that, if it's not deceitful, because sometimes we see this deceit where someone is trying to act on that platform, but they're not actually really on that platform. So human nature has everything, including plenty of deceit. As long as the intelligence is under the control of Maya, human nature must be regulated by rules and prohibitions. Thus, in this condition, the Vaidhi nature will certainly be in effect. When the intelligence is liberated from the bondage of Maya, however, human nature no longer needs to be governed by rules and prohibitions. Rather, it is prompted by spontaneous love. It's interesting, sometimes when we're on the road preaching and so on, we come to groups of people who are resolutely opposed to following rules and regulations. They're really fallen and they don't know the principles of bhakti particularly. Like we call them hippies, right? People like that. And they think they've heard something about Krishna consciousness and they think, oh, we should just be liberated and do whatever we like and just run towards Krishna. But it's not guided by a deep Aishwarya mood of respect at core. In the bottom of the heart, that Aishwarya is vacant. And there's a simple example of that I give in those circumstances, that they're arguing about why should we follow rules. So there's a mundane example of what is the most popular activity on the planet. And probably the most popular activity is football on the whole planet. In all different countries, they all have their football leagues and so on. But what would football be without the rules and regulations? There wouldn't be a game unless we had the rules and regulations. It would just be mayhem. So if ever you're speaking to people of this nature, like I'm describing, who just think they can just do anything in the name of spontaneous attraction, but they don't have any experience of following the rules, etc., they don't know what it is to be respectful about devotional practices, then you can offer this example. It's like if they don't have a referee to blow the whistle and you can only pass the ball in one direction, etc., and you have so many rules and regulations on the field and everyone knows them. So it's the same with Vaidhi Bhakti. There are these rules and regulations. They have to be there to train the conditioned soul in order to bring him to a qualified position where he can perform Raganuga Bhakti. At the same time, that Vaidhi Bhakti is not necessarily essential for one who has practiced in previous births. Sometimes a devotee will have deep sanskars of practicing Vaidhi Marg, so he can very quickly jump on the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. But we have to know what is Raganuga Bhakti clearly, and it's going to be described. In this condition, I'll just read that again. Rather, it is prompted by spontaneous love. That's Ragmarg. In this condition, the Vaidhi tendency no longer remains, and the Raganuga tendency becomes manifest. This Rag Anuga tendency is the unadulterated nature of the jiva. This is our nature. It's not Vaidhi. Vaidhi is not the nature of the soul. The nature of the soul is Rag. It's not Vaidhi. We follow the Vaidhi as long as we are not attracted spontaneously to Krishna. When that spontaneous attraction begins to overpower the consciousness, then we simply, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes, we run without even looking where we're going. We just, like the gopis, they just ran to the forest. They didn't even consider, their intelligence wasn't operating. They just knew that the love of their life was calling them, and they just ran to the forest. Thus, this Raganuga tendency is the unadulterated nature of the jiva. Every single sentence in this Jaiva Dharma is just amazing. It's so thick with jewels. This Raganuga tendency is the unadulterated nature of the jiva. It is the perfected state of the self, swabhav siddhi. Swa means own, bhav means nature, and siddhi means perfected. Transcendental chinmoya, and free from bondage to dull matter, jada mukta. That means freed from those four purusarthas, dharma, artha, karma, moksha. Freed from this also. The pure spiritual jiva's relationship with the material world is completely terminated when Sri Krishna wills. It's by his will. Until this time, the jiva's relationship with the material world can only tend towards its eventual cessation. And this eventual cessation is called Shayanmukh. That's what Shayanmukh means. By the way, I have to remind everybody there is a beautiful glossary in the back. Please become familiar with using it. Words like Shayanmukh, etc., they're all in the glossary. If you want a deeper understanding of this, you can look in the glossary. Devotees, sometimes they write and ask me questions, and I just tell them each time, look in the glossary first. Become familiar with this whole jewel that we have. It's like a diamond, and it has many facets to it. In the Shayanmukh stage, the jiva's intelligence, it attains freedom from matter to the extent of swarupata, jada mukta, but not to the extent of vastu jada mukti. So this vastu means when you leave your body. Vastu siddhi is when you no longer have the material body. This is at the time of death, we can say. But the swarupata that is mentioning here, this is when we're in our bodies, and it's like the siddhadeya can be realized through meditation. The vastu deha is realized on leaving this body. And again, please look in the glossary and find these terms and become very familiar with them, so you're completely comfortable with the language, with the vocabulary here. When one attains the stage of vastuta jada mukti, the ragatmika vritti, or mood of the ragatmikas, is awakened in the pure jiva, both in terms of his internal spiritual identity, swarup, and constitutional state, vastu. That means his siddhadeya is awakened. His siddhadeya is attracted to this path of rag, and our path of rag is to follow in the footsteps of the ragatmikas. The ragatmikas, atma, are soaked in attraction and greed to please and satisfy the Lord exclusively. That is all that's in their being, is how to please the Lord with all my heart and soul, totally. So that is the nature of the ragatmikas, and we are following the ragatmikas, gopis in particular, Lalita, Vishaka, Champakalata, Chitra, Sungavidya, etc. This ragatmika prakriti is the nature of the eternal residence of Braj. The jiva, who in the Shayanmukh stage follows in the wake of the ragatmika nature, is known as rag anuga. Anuga means to follow. We are following those ragatmikas. I still getting questions about these terminologies. There's three: rupanuga, raganuga, and ragatmika. We must become familiar completely with these terminologies. One who follows the way of rag, that's a raganuga. This condition of raganuga should be ardently sought after by the jivas. So understand what's happening here. This is Vaishnava Das is addressing quite a conditioned soul in the form of Lahari Mahashai. He knows different languages, he's materially eloquent and so on like that. but still he doesn't know the depth of spiritual reality. He doesn't know this distinction between Vaidhi and Rag. So Vaishnava Das is explaining this in such a sublime manner, but in a very elevated way. He's explaining it very beautifully. As long as this condition is absent, human intelligence remains spontaneously attached to mundane objects. Our spontaneity goes for material instead of towards Krishna. Is it true? Is it true? It's a fact. We're attracted there. Why? I've said many times, because by nature, the jiva wants to enjoy. The jiva has to enjoy. It's his nature to enjoy. Anandam buddhi, what's that? Ananda sat. The nature of the jiva is to, and if he's not enjoying the spiritual practice, he will look for pleasure in the material realm. That's the nature. Due to one's nishag, the false acquired nature, the bewildered jiva mistakenly considers attachment for mundane objects to be his natural spiritual attachment, svabhavika anurag. So we've already discussed this beautiful word nishag in relationship to the ice. So this is an incredible visual appreciation of this word, nishag, my acquired nature, because I've been associating with matter since time immemorial. Whenever I made that decision in the Brahmajyoti from that Tatashta place, I made that decision from that point of time. I've been associating with matter in all different ways, in different bodies, etc. So the impressions are so thick and so deep to make me think that I am this body. But they go away very quickly when one takes to transcendental knowledge, because it's so powerful. It's like the holy name can cut through these misconceptions just practically in a moment sometimes. Due to one's nishag, the false acquired nature, the bewildered jiva mistakenly considers attachment for mundane objects to be his natural spiritual attachment, svabhavika anurag. At that time, one's natural pure attachment for spiritual objects is not present. So he's perhaps practicing, trying to attain subtle pleasures or gross pleasures in the name of spiritual practice, like yogic practices, Ashtanga yoga, etc. Performing these sorts of things, thinking, oh, this is spiritual. All he's doing is bodily feeling bodily good. Shantaras. Huh? Shantaras. Shantaras, yes, it's there, yes. The misconception of I and mine are two types of egoism whose influence is very prominent in the mundane sphere, and which leads one to think, I am this body, and all things relating to this body are mine. So Vaishnavadas is speaking to Laharidis. He's trying to puncture his false ego, which has already been described. He's leading the kirtans, and he's looking at the devotees expectantly for some praise or some glory. This is what was described before. So his false ego has to be purified. So Vaishnavadas is doing this very beautifully. Due to these conceptions, one naturally feels attracted to people and things that bring pleasure to the material body, and one feels averse to people and things that impede material pleasure. What do we see most common in between husband and wife nowadays, in the Western world in particular, is divorce. It's something like 85% of all marriages go into divorce, even more than this actually. Because once one of the partners stops satisfying the other partner, because they were only in the marriage for their own pleasure, they're so addicted to the material pleasures. And once one starts feeling he or she is not getting sufficient material pleasure, then they just want to change partner. And they do that again and again, looking for this material happiness, and having so much struggle and pain along the way, and creating so much varna sankha, so much unwanted population, so many crazy kids, crazy people. The world, we know, this is the mechanism of Kali Yuga, how it's just plunging into deeper darkness because of these generations of Varna Sankar that are taking control of governments, etc. We had a survey one time when I was in Australia of our Gurukul. In our Gurukul, there were about 80 kids, and we wanted to know how many of the Gurukul kids lived with their proper seminal mother and father. And it worked out there was about 10% actually lived with their proper mother and father. So it's not just amongst the full-on materialists, it's also in the devotional. Apparently, the people who are practicing devotion, because they're not sufficiently educated in what is material and what is spiritual. If you know what is spiritual, why would you want to transgress the laws of Dharma? Actually, my Gurudev used to say regularly, if you're in the Grihastha ashram, stay there. Don't look to jump around from place to place. Don't look to suddenly jump into another ashram. And if you're in the brahmachari or vanapras or sanya, then stay in that ashram. But don't keep changing your ashrams. It's very bewildering, very disturbing for the practitioner to do like that. We want a steady environment to practice these monumental truths. So the conception of I and mine are two types of egoism whose influence is very prominent in the mundane sphere and which lead one to think, I am this body and all things related to this body are mine. Due to these conceptions, one naturally feels attracted to people and things which bring pleasure to the material body, and one feels averse to people and things that impede material pleasure. So we'll publish tonight from the 7th chapter this where was it?
Ego.
Yes,
I and mine.
this colossal affair of samsara. We have notes on that, we can put it out. When the bewildered jiva falls under the sway of such attachment and aversion, he considers others to be friends or enemies, and displays love or hatred for them in three ways. Sarika, in relation to the material body and its acquisitions. Samanjika, in relation to society and social ideas. Naitika, and in relation to morality and ethics. Thus he engages in the struggle for material existence. So yes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has covered all areas here. He's this sarika, relation to the material body and its acquisitions. That's one conception. And then samanjika, in relation to society and social ideas. That's another dimension, so to speak. And then naitika, in relation to morality and ethics. That's a whole nother. And in all of these, one is feeling attraction and aversion. This attraction and aversion. This is the coming from the original tatashta consciousness. This oscillating between spirit and matter. It's all coming down to the same consideration each time. The false attachment for kanaka, gold, and the things that money can buy, and kamini, anyone who satisfies our perverted lusty desires, brings one under the control of temporary happiness and distress. This is known as samsara, a state in which one wanders throughout the material universe, gaining only birth, death, the fruits of karma, and various conditions of life, some high and some low. Abrahma bhuvanaloka puna avritino rajuna. It's saying that one travels through all these different planetary systems up and down regularly. This is what we're doing. And Srimad Bhagavatam describes all of these different lokas. It describes the subterranean heavenly planets. It describes the Swagaloka. It describes the battles between the demons and the devas. It describes all of the different personalities and entities in this one universe. And we get the full picture of the travel of the jiva traveling to all these different lokas, these different places, and experiencing all these different moods. And sometimes he's a controller, sometimes he's being controlled, etc. And we've been through them all. But if we just come to this transcendental point, if we come to take this transcendental message very seriously and practice it carefully, we can be liberated completely from all of this rubbish. Because it really is. I mean, this Naimittika-dharma is rubbish for the transcendental visionary. And it has to be relinquished. This is the title of the chapter. This is what Vaishnava Das is trying to encourage Lahari Mahashai not to be attached to his position as a zamindar, as a knower of so many different languages, as an accomplished musician, but to lose. These are subtle attachments. He wants to purify that base. These are heavy things to actually purify, but we see the brilliant way in which Vaishnava Das is explaining it just on Shastra. The jivas who are bound in this way cannot easily comprehend spiritual attachment, chid anurag, nor can they have any realization or experience of such a thing. In reality, the jivas who are conditioned by this um, binding, they cannot begin to experience. They don't want to hear about it. They just start yawning. That they're just not interested. They're hell bent on with their material ambitions to try and get something from this world. In reality, this spiritual attachment is the jiva's true function, swadharma, and his eternal nature. However, he forgets this and becomes engrossed in attachment to matter, although he is actually a particle of consciousness. Thus, he suffers degradation. This is a miserable condition, although hardly any of the jivas who are thus entangled in samsara think so. That's the big con. There's an expression I heard once in Australia that 3 million drunks are not necessarily right. If 3 million drunks think something, it doesn't mean that it's right. If all the conditioned populace thinks that buying pharmaceutical drugs is a good thing, it doesn't mean it's right for the body. If the popular opinion is, to do all sorts of things damaging to your body and they think it's good, then it's not necessarily going to be successful. It doesn't mean it's right. The thoughtful, introverted personality who's following spiritual path has to discern all of these things from Shastra. The jivas bound by Maya are wholly unacquainted with the Raganuga nature, to say nothing of the Ragatmika nature. The Raganuga nature may be awakened in the hearts of the jivas, but only occasionally by the mercy of sadhus. Consequently, this Raganuga nature is rare and difficult to obtain, and those who are entangled in samsara are cheated of it by Maya. Doesn't this make you want to weep? I mean, this is the condition of, practically 100% of the populace. They don't want this Ragma, even amongst the practicing devotees. Sometimes they become rooted in the path of Vaidhi-marg, and they don't want to even hear. Even sometimes in some places, talking about Ras Lila or talking about Ras Katha is banned, is prohibited in assemblies of Vaishnavas. What is that? That is upper-siddhantic teachings. That is not pure. They haven't understood what is the gift of Mahaprabhu if they try and put restrictions on discussing Rag. Ragmarg in assembly should always be done with care and discernment in considering who is the audience, etc., and what is the adhikar that you're speaking to. It should always be done sensitively, but it should always be done nevertheless. It's not that you throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Still, these teachings have to go on. If you try to blanket ban all of these teachings, what are you left with? You're just left with a general religion. Like some of these institutions, they just become now religious institutions. They're just religion. They're following morality, they're following the four regulative principles, but they're not really traveling anywhere spiritually. If their leaders aren't absorbed in this Raganuga platform, then how can the general people be involved in it? They can't. They just won't want to hear. Is it true? Is it true what I'm saying? You're doubtful? You're doubtful? Anyway, this is the path that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is expressing here. I'll just read one more paragraph. Bhagavan, however, is all-knowing and merciful. He saw that the jivas who are bound by Maya have been cheated of their spiritual inclination. Cheated. Now, how will they attain good fortune? By what means can remembrance of Krishna be aroused in the hearts of the jivas who are enthralled by Maya? By the association of sadhus. The jivas will be able to understand that they are servants of Krishna. Yet because there is no prescribed injunction that one must associate with sadhus, where is there even a hope that sadhu sangha, the association of saintly devotees, may be possible or easily attainable for all? Consequently, there can be no auspiciousness for people in general without the path of rules and regulations, Vaidhi-marg. Therefore, one has to adhere to the path initially of Vaidhi-marg. But he should be in his heart hoping for the mercy of that realized sadhu, that pure Rasik Vaishnava, who can give the direction of Rag-marg. So we'll continue tomorrow. Very powerful teachings. Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. Page 38. But I just first of all want to recap into the paragraph previous to where we're up to here and start the jivas bound by Maya on page 37 at the bottom, just to recap where we're actually, what is the mood we're moving through towards. We discussed Ragatmika yesterday. Okay, I'm reading from the bottom of page 37. The jivas bound by Maya are wholly unacquainted with the Raganuga nature, to say nothing of the Ragatmika nature. Just take a man on the street. He couldn't begin to think of the nature of the meaning of Raganuga. It's absolutely, totally as foreign as could possibly be. Their only focus is karma at max. The Raganuga nature may be awakened in the hearts of jivas, but only occasionally by the mercy of sadhus. Even the sadhu will come, the sadhu will speak these truths, but even how many will listen? We have in all the religious and spiritual histories that we know, how many sadhus have been fully embraced by the whole populace? Practically none, not even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna, God himself, when he comes, it's not that the whole populace becomes enamored with him. So, because why? Because the jiva has the sovereignty of independence. And with this independent mood, because without that independence, how can you possibly genuinely love the Lord unless you make the decision yourself to come to Krishna? It can't be coerced. That part of the heart is very soft, delicate, fragrant, and sensitive, and it can't be coerced. It can only be inspired, and that's the nature of all our practices. At a certain point, we stop just following like the rules and regulations out of fear, and hopefully this rag will be inspired where it's more inspirational than simply like in the army, more or less, you're following the rules and regulations out of fear. But that rules and regulations is very healthy to become acquainted with the path. The rishis and sages, they've given us these rules and regulations. We'll discuss, this will be coming up. Consequently, this Raganuga nature is rare and difficult to obtain, and those who are entangled in samsara are cheated of it by Maya. Many tricks along the way to distract us from this path. Even when we meet the sadhu, we can still become distracted and frustrated and think it's not happening fast enough. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, I've said many times, he gave these three measures, we can say, that are needed to be fully embraced by the sadhak. And the first is patience. This is not going to happen overnight. I must be patient with myself. I must be patient with the journey. We're talking about crossing the entire material consciousness and coming to the spiritual place. It's not going to happen even in one lifetime, perhaps not two or even three, maybe 4 or 5. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, again, he was so encouraging. He said, yes, it can happen now. Yes, it can happen now to a certain degree, but the realization of my relationship in the transcendental world is going to take time. Why? Because I have so many impressions, sanskars from previous births after births that I have to purify so I can be detached fully from this subtle body. Getting detached from the gross body is quite simple comparatively, but getting detached from the subtle body, our reputation, the history of our identities, etc., is not so easy to actually purify happily and leave behind. Bhagavan, however, is all-knowing and merciful. He saw that the jivas who are bound by Maya have been cheated of their spiritual inclination. It's our inclination to go to spirit, not matter. But it's also our lower tendency to be attracted to the material flickering pleasures. Yehi shams pasaja bhava dukkha yone etevate. Now, how will they attain good fortune? By what means can remembrance of Krishna be aroused in the hearts of the jivas who are enthralled by Maya? By the association of sadhus. The jivas will be able to understand that they are servants of Krishna. Yes, sadhu sangha, sharava shastri hoy. Lava matra sadhu sangha, sadhava siddhi hoy. Even a moment's association is sufficient. Yet, because there is no prescribed injunction that one must associate with sadhus, where is there even a hope that sadhu sangha, the association of saintly devotees, may be possible or easily attainable for all? There's no requisite in the universities today. There's no media coverage that you must seek a sadhu and associate with him. We're not hearing from that quarter. We're hearing the opposite, actually. So it's not easy for the conditioned soul to come to this path. It's covered. Consequently, there can be no auspiciousness for people in general without the path of rules and regulations, vidimag. Yes, this path of rules and regulations must be there to start to train the conditioned soul to have full respect and regard for the Lord. Unless that respect is a form of love, but it's respect is a form of love with Aishwarya. But that must be there, like I've just described, our limited history coming through Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and coming to Gurudev. That was very much Aishwarya with Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And that was so necessary, that vidhi, those rules. But there should come a time when that should be purified and relieved of and left behind. The Shastras were manifested from the merciful consideration of Sri Bhagavan. Issuing forth by his mercy, the sun of the Shastra arose in the sky of the hearts of the ancient Aryan rishis and illuminated all the injunctions and rules to be followed by the populace. If we look at any rule or any injunction, initially we might think it's an imposition and difficult to follow various rules, like, for example, rising at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning and sitting for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 hours vibrating Hare Krishna mantra might feel, and being very careful about offering our bhoga that we take each day. So many things might feel like a burden or an imposition. but it's a burden because of my um, animal-like uh, consciousness that I just think I can do anything I want to do because I'm so desirous of pleasure. Labda sadulavam idam bahusambhavante manusyam dam artharanya turnam yateta. This verse um, accentuating that the animals even have the uh, material pleasures. Why should we be acting in such a way as to attain these material pleasures? But if we follow the rules and regulations, you start to come to the human platform by these, and this was the mercy of the Aryan rishis. So any rule or regulation, like for example, rising in the morning, is a wonderful habit to become habituated to just seeing so many dawns in our lives. The devotees have seen hundreds and hundreds of dawns, thousands of dawns, because every morning they're up at that time. And the dawn was dropped before the devas. When Lord Brahma, in the 12th chapter of the third canto, he's describing like the sunset, for example, was the that tantalizing manifestation to attract the demons away from having sex with Lord Brahma. The manifestation of that beautiful woman attracted them, and that manifestation is described as the twilight. The twilight is filled with the mode of passion. When the sun goes down, the general populace start anxiously looking for some type of gross pleasure. All the nightclubs open, the bars open. Everyone's on the street looking for pleasure, looking for some sort of gross sensation. That's passion. Whereas the dawn, the sunrise, it's described in the Bhagavatam, was Lord Brahma. He drops the sunrise, dawn, in front of the devas, and the devas take it, it's described, and they sport with it. They sport with the dawn. The dawn is the most exhilarating time of the day. And prior to the dawn, we've spoken before, is Nishanta Lila. And this is the most, what can we call, the most loving time between Radha and Krishna is in this Nishanta Lila, the most exquisite time of meeting and separation in the Nishanta Lila. So if the devotees are regularly awake and alive to this fact of Krishna's pastimes at this time of day, what could be a greater gift that the Aryan rishis have bestowed upon us to rise at 4:30 in the morning and make our lives clean and human again? So everything that the rishis have given us is positive and plus. There's a book of rules written by one devotee, and it's called A Beautiful Way of Life, because all the rules and regulations are a beautiful way of life. It gets perverted when some egotistical, abusive kind of temple commander starts shouting and yelling and making you feel very uncomfortable about it. But that's one way to learn, but sometimes we suffer different sorts of mental abuse by the rules being imposed upon us, and we can find difficulty there and even rebel against that. But the principle of the rules and regulations are only, all of them, for our ultimate good and benefit, because the rishis, they manifested them from the compassion of their hearts, prompted by the mercy of the Lord. In the beginning of the Veda Shastra, one part of the Veda Shastra teaches pious activities directed towards the attainment of material fruits, karma. One part teaches knowledge directed towards liberation, jnana, and another part teaches devotion with love and affection for Bhagavan, bhakti. The jivas who are infatuated with Maya are found in many different conditions. Some are completely stupefied, some have a little knowledge, and some are knowledgeable in many subjects. The Shastra provides different types of instructions that are consistent with the different mentalities of the jivas. This differentiation is known as adhikar, eligibility. Absolutely beautiful paragraph. This is adhikar, and we must all appreciate that and not expect everyone to be on either our fallen level or our more evolved level. Everyone has to be respected for the levels and adhikar that they are at. And Guru will always very carefully ascertain the adhikar of each of his followers and disciples and will instruct us accordingly to our adhikar. Adhikar means kar means to do. It's from the word karma. So ka means to do. So adi means the eligibility to do. This is what the etymology of adhikar means. There are countless individual jivas, and they have innumerable varieties of adhikar, which have been divided into three broad categories according to their primary characteristics. Karma adhikar, eligibility for pious action, leading to material gain. Gyan adhikar, eligibility for knowledge leading to liberation. And Prem adhikar, eligibility for unalloyed loving service to Bhagavan. So not all are the same. The Veda Shastra specifies these three types of eligibility and establishes proper codes of behavior for those in each of the three groups. They're not all bunched together. This world is not an institution. It's an individual movement of various jivas fulfilling their different karmas. This whole earthly planet is called karma yoni. Yoni means species. It's the species of karma. The heavenly planets are Bhoga Yoni, the species of pleasure, and lower are Papa Yoni, the species of sin. The Dharma that the Vedas have thus prescribed is known as Vaidhi Dharma. So this is the rules and regulations given by the Aryan rishis. The tendency by which a person is compelled to adopt this Vaidhi Dharma is known as Vaidhi Pravritti, the proclivity to follow the religious codes of Shastra. Those who are altogether lacking in the tendency to follow the rules of Shastra are thoroughly avidya. So many. Just because we may live in a company of mostly devotees, don't think that most of the populace are they actually are opposed to the rules and regulations. We see them here in Bengal, drinking liquor. Most of the tradesmen around here, they're all drunk in Bengal because they know inherently they're not fulfilling their true dharma and there's no one leading them in a dharmic direction. Therefore, what other recourse does an ignorant man have except come to drink? And most of his friends drink. And so many of the people in Bengal, for example, where we're living here, are prone to this disease of drinking. It's tragic. They are opposed to injunctions of Shastra. I don't mean it. They are engaged in sinful activities, and their lives are given over to avidya karma, sinful like drinking, for example. Actions that defy the regulations of Shastra. Such people are excluded from the jurisdiction of the Vedas and are known as mlechas, people belonging to an uncivilized non-Aryan race. And this, sadly, means most of the Western populace and also many of the populace here in Bharatvash. It's the depth of Kali Yuga right now. We are in the winter season of Kali Yuga, the darkest Kali Yuga ever in the 1,000 Kali Yuga cycles of one single day of Lord Brahma. But the son of Mahaprabhu is there. And if with great fortune we come in contact with that, our lives are so much relieved of all the pressures that this material society is trying to impose upon us in the form of sensual activities in all different ways. The duties of those in the three eligibility groups outlined in the Vedas have been described still more elaborately in the Samhita Shastras of the Rishis, who composed numerous Shastras that follow the tenets of the Vedas. The duties of those eligible for karma are described in 20 Dharma Shastras, compiled by Manu and other Pandits. Those conversant with the different philosophical systems described the function of those eligible for Gyan. Sorry, I didn't read that properly. those conversant with the different philosophical systems described the function of those eligible for Gyan. Describe, it should be, I think. Describe the function of those eligible for Gyan in the Shastras, dealing with logic and philosophy. So two types of Shastra here. And finally, the instructions and activities for people eligible for bhakti have been determined by those who are learned in the Puranas and pure Tantras. All these literatures are known as Vedic because they are in keeping with the Veda. In the life of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his journey, when he was covered by Yogamaya initially, in his early years, his journey coming to the Chaitanya Charitamrita is described when he was very much, first of all, in his youth, influenced by the Bible, by Christianity and the views there, and then Islam even, and looking at all these different philosophies and religions. So there's a gradation here, and eventually he begins to embrace the Tamasic Vedic Shastras, and then gradually comes to the Rajasic Shastras, and then eventually comes to the Sattvika Shastras. And he's describing these in chapter 13. He describes these different Shastras, which they are exactly, which Upanishads, etc., are in Tamagun, which Upanishads are in Sattvagun, because they're not all the same. An ignorant person might think, oh, any Samhita, any Isopanishad, this is actually pure, but they're not all pure. They're not pure in the sense that some are inclined to karma yoga, some are inclined to Gyan yoga, and some are inclined to bhakti yoga. They're not all the same. There's a differentiation, just like there's a differentiation between the jivas. This differentiation of adhikar is there. And finally, the instructions and activities for people eligible. Oh, I've read that. Modern day pseudo philosophers of these shastras, without a view to the underlying purport of all the shastras, have tried to establish the superiority of only one of its limbs. In other words, they want to advocate karma yoga, or they want to advocate Gyan yoga, and they want to separate them and say they're not connected ultimately to the ladder leading to bhakti. The Varnashram system was designed to lead us to bhakti. That's the process. But if someone tries to just say, no, it's all about Nishkarma Karma Yoga or Karma Yoga activities, Sakam Yoga, and propagate that, and they do propagate that, or those who are advocating moksha or mukti, thousands and thousands of societies propagating this moksha as being the ultimate. And people are thinking, yes, they've separated the single goal from the ultimate goal. This is what he's saying. The superiority of only one of its limbs. This has cast innumerable people into a pit of argument and doubt. Of course, they become confused. Bhagavad Gita, which is the matchless deliberation on all these shastras, clearly establishes that karma, not aiming at Gyan, is atheistic. Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters are describing karma yoga. And then the next 6 chapters are describing bhakti yoga. And the last 6 chapters are describing Gyan yoga. It's described like a treasure chest. The base of the treasure chest is karma yoga, and the sides are Gyan yoga, and the treasure inside is bhakti yoga. They all constitute a single chest, a single treasure chest. They're not separate. But if you try to separate and say, no, this is the school of karma only, people will become confused. They'll think, yes, that's the ultimate reality. That's work very hard, like the various mottos we have, I've seen in Delhi. Work hard and fulfill your karma. This is the purpose of life. And how many people do this? So many. Huh? So many. And then if they're not doing that, what are they doing? Oh, we've heard of moksha and liberation. This is a higher path. So then they advocate that. These are just the sides of the treasure chest. But we should know, it's going to be explained. Karma and Gyan that are not directed towards bhakti are also cheating processes. They're not giving the final goal. In reality, karma yoga, Gyan yoga, and bhakti yoga form a single yoga system. This is the point. They form a single yoga system. This is a great truth that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here. Many are not acquainted with this. Karma yoga should be evolving to Gyan yoga. Gyan yoga should be evolving to Bhakti yoga. It's a process. This is the Vedic Vaishnava Siddhanta conclusion. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very mercifully giving us this conclusion here.
So we can say that due to our good karmas, we come to the Gyan Yoga, and then through this knowledge of Bhakti, then we can attain the.
Then you'll want to give up that Gyan yoga path. Karma, what's it? Karma, Jnana Adi, Anavritam. Anyabilasata Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi, Anavritam. These Gyan and Karma should be rejected ultimately, because logic and reason don't have any place in the kingdom of pure love. The jiva who is bewildered by Maya is first compelled to adopt the path of karma. Then he must adopt karma yoga. By the way, I'm hoping that some enthusiastic person will, on this particular page all about karma, delineate it nicely in a diagram, put out what is Shubha karma, Akarma, Vikarma, Kukarma, etc. And if it was all written out in a nice format so that people can very easily see at a glance what is success, what is Shubha, and what is Ashubha. It'll be described, but just be thinking as we're reading how to place it in a diagram form, because it's quite technical and it would be helpful to have it in a diagram form. I don't have a diagram of this yet. The jivas who are bewildered by Maya, the jiva who is bewildered by Maya is first compelled to adopt the path of karma. Then he must adopt karma yoga. There's a difference between karma and karma yoga. Followed by Gyan yoga and finally Bhakti yoga. However, if he is not shown that all these are but different steps on the one staircase, the conditioned soul cannot ascend to the temple of Bhakti. It's natural that you will begin in karma yoga, trying to facilitate the pleasures of your material body. But then with a little bit of discernment, you start to think, well, there must be something more in life than this, satisfying my senses. Oh, the path of liberation, that seems more. But there's something else beyond liberation. This is a big step, the next big step. We call it bhukti, mukti, and bhakti. These are other three terms for this. Bhukti, mukti, spriha yavat, pischachi, hridi, vartate. These two witches of bhukti and mukti. What does it mean to adopt the path of karma? Karma consists of the activities that one performs with the body or mind in the course of maintaining one's life. Everyone has to maintain their life, so we're all performing our karmas. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says this world is a place where the enthusiastic jiva is desperately trying to fulfill his karmas, dancing on the stage of life. He says like this, very beautifully. There are two types of karma. Now this is where we need the diagram. It'll be helpful. Auspicious, Shubha, and inauspicious, Ashubha. The results that the jiva obtains by performing Shubha karma are auspicious, whereas those that he obtains by Ashubha karma are inauspicious. Ashubha karma is also known as sin, pap, or prohibited acts, vikarma. The non-performance of Shubha karma is known as akarma. If you're not doing your dharmic duty, it's akarma. Both vikarma and akarma are bad, whereas Shubha karma is good. So there's distinction. There are three types of Shubha karma: obligatory, daily rites, nitya karma; circumstantial duties, Naimittika karma; and ceremonies performed out of a desire for personal benefit, kamya karma. It's very clear the way he explains it. Kamya karma is completely self-interested and should be rejected. The Shastras direct us to adopt nitya karma and naimittika karma. initially, Naimittika-dharma. The Shastras have considered what is fit to be taken up and what is fit to be abandoned. The Shastras are our dearmost friends. We must touch the Shastras regularly, daily, to actually go forward in this maze of options that the material soul finds himself in this world. Naimittic karma and karmya karma the Shastras have considered what is fit to be taken up and what is fit to be abandoned, and they have classified nitya karma, naimittic karma, and kamya karma as karma, all three. Whereas akarma and kukarma, impious activity, have not been included in this category. They are not categorized as being favorable for the jiva. Although kamya karma is counted as karma, it is undesirable and should be given up. So only nitya karma and naimittic karma are truly acceptable as karma. He's defining karma. Nitya karma is karma that produces auspiciousness for the body, mind, and society, and which results in promotion to other planets after death. Everyone is obligated to perform nitya karma, such as chanting the Brahma Gayatri mantra at the 3 junctions of the day, Sandhya Vandana, offering prayers, using honest means to maintain one's body and society, behaving truthfully, and caring for one's family members and dependents. He's answering Lahari Maharshai's question here. Lahari Maharshai has asked the question about why the Vaishnavas not respect more this this Sandhya Vandana. Why they're not respecting that more? And Vaishnava Das is explaining that they do, but they see it in its particular place. He's going to explain. Naimittic karma is karma that one must carry out under certain circumstances or on certain occasions. For example, performing rites for the departed souls of one's mother and father, atoning for sins, and so on. This is naimittic karma, circumstantial. The authors of the Shastras first examined the natures of human beings and their natural eligibility traits, and then established Varnashram Dharma. So he said this many times, the distinction between the jivas, they're not all the same. There's separation here. So the Varnashram system was to create a system where all the different adhikas could actually unify and progressively work towards serving Krishna. The ultimate goal is to bring us to the spiritual platform of bhakti. That is the objective, always that objective. Their intention was to prescribe a system in which nitya karma and naimittic karma could be carried out in an excellent way in this world. How kind of them, really. The gist of this arrangement is that there are 4 natural types of human beings, classified according to the work that they are eligible to perform: Brahmanas, teachers and priests; Kshatriyas, administrators and warriors; Vaishyas, agriculturists and businessmen; and Sudras, artisans and laborers. People are also situated in 4 orders or stages of life. Interesting that today the artisans are considered like the famous people of the world. They're the people that the populace look up to. Everything is upside down, completely topsy-turvy. People are also situated in 4 orders or stages of life, which are known as ashrams: brahmachari, unmarried student life; grihastha, family life; vanaprasth, retirement from family responsibilities; and sannyas, the renounced ascetic life. Those who are fond of akarma and vikarma are known as antyaja, outcast, and they are not situated in any ashram. Antyaja. If you're not following, if you're rejecting, like most people are actually antyaja. In India, there is still a semblance. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada described this Varnashram system like a dead elephant. Even an elephant dead can be very glorious. If you see a dead elephant stretched out, it somehow has a mightiness about it. There's some speciality about it. But the Varnashram system, principally in India, has degenerated completely. But still in the villages, many of the dharmic behavior patterns are still there, are still running. People aspire for a dharmic life, but it's not easy. And if they're not even aspiring for a dharmic life, they are 100% antyaja, outcast. The different varnas are determined by nature, birth, activities, and characteristics. When varna is determined only on the basis of birth, the original purpose of varnashram is lost. Just like in the example of Parashuram, his father Jamadagni, great Brahminical personality of great Brahminical power. Parashuram was born as his son and had great Kshatriya qualities. He killed 21 generations of Kshatriyas with his axe. He had that spirit. So he shouldn't be considered entirely. He is of Brahminical seminal descent, but at the same time, he had a Kshatriya spirit. So there's a distinction there. But if the Varnashram doesn't accommodate the different natures in people, then it's no longer functioning for its full purpose. Like a very wealthy man can have a son who's a complete like barbarian idiot, you know, and or wants to be a soldier in the army or something. Completely different to the wealthy, say, Vaishya's um, uh, profession. So it can't be based on birth. Not at all. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying this very clearly here. Ashram is determined by the various stages of life, depending on whether one is married or unmarried, or has renounced the association of the opposite sex. Married life is known as the Grihastha ashram, and unmarried life is known as the Brahmachari ashram. Disassociation from spouse and family is characteristic of the Vanaprastha and Sannyas ashrams. Sannyas is the highest of all the ashrams, and the Brahmanas are the highest of all the Varnas. This conclusion is established in the crest jewel of all Shastras, Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 17, 15 to 21. So now we're going to have a whole list of Shastric descriptions of the different Varnas, etc., which is very important to appreciate and have faith in, coming directly from Shastra. This is about the Varnashram. And then Vaishnav Das is going to place this understanding within context of Lahari Maharshai's question of why the Vaishnavas honor the different eligibilities of the different personalities in the world, and the distinction, unless this is appreciated carefully, will not be able to, if you're substantiating that only these Sandhya Vandanam is the principle, is the topmost, like Hari is thinking. But actually, Shuddha Bhakti is not being described in that. Raganuga Bhakti is certainly not described in that. Vaishnava Das has already described, he's touched on the distinction between Vaidhi and Rag. But this is going to come out more. This is a very deep topic. It's a very powerful topic. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very merciful in spelling this out very clearly. So we'll discuss these distinctions tomorrow. Jaiva Dharma ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Varnashram system ki jai. Golda Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Now we're up to page 42. And now Vaishnava Das is going to give the Shastric Praman for what he's been describing. What was he describing last time? Was the variegated nature of the jivas. And this Varnashram system has been designed to accommodate all the different types of jivas, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, and the sannyasis, vanapras, grihastas, and brahmacharis, the different individual natures. And if we don't fall in one of those natures, then we are considered antyaja. The antyaja are those souls who don't want to follow the rules and regulations. They don't know them, and neither do they want to follow them. So this is a very dangerous condition, because the rishis, it's described, out of their compassion, inspired by Krishna directly, manifested all of these um, regulations to support the jiva's journey in this world. All these rules and regulations are nothing but support for the sincere sadhak. If we have objection to the various rules and regulations, we should look closely at what is the um, purpose of that regulation. Why should I be opposed to it? And we can find some failing within ourselves, because all of the rules and regulations have profound um, wisdom behind them. Just like, for example, in Chaturmasya, in the first month, what is it? We take no leafy vegetables. Why? Because the leafy vegetables are manifesting at the times of the rain, and it's at the beginning of the monsoon season. So those jivas that fall with the rain, they can get caught with the various leafy green growths. So when you're eating those vegetables, then it's a good chance that you can be consuming jivas. This is why they all have purpose. All the rules and regulations has complete purpose to it. And especially in Hari Bhakti Vilas by Gopal Bhatta and Sanatana Goswami, or Sanatana Goswami and Gopal Bhatta, in Hari Bhakti Vilas, all of these rules and regulations are clearly delineated. And there's purpose, and there's such affection for all of them. There's so much mercy to be gained by carefully adhering to them. But still, this is the path of Vaidhi Bhakti, when we're very cautious about. By the time we reach the um, direct path of Raganuga Bhakti, then we have already been impressed by these jewels, these rules and regulations. So they become a part of our being. We just never do. We never transgress these rules for any reason. We're not making an effort to follow them. It's just we understand this is keeping me human. This is keeping me clean. These are supportive. So like that. So now, this was what he was discussing yesterday. So now he's going to give the praman for this. So we'll read these. Varnanam asomanam cha janma bhumi anusrinani asan prakrityo nenam nicha nicho tamo maha. The varnas and ashrams of humanity have higher and lower natures in accordance with the higher and lower places on Sri Bhagavan's universal body from which they appeared. So this varnashram system is manifesting from the body of Krishna. Daivi varnashram, we say. But it has most certainly become corrupted by the nature of the caste system today, has become corrupted because men just want to exploit. It's the demonic influence that prevails in the atmosphere in this age of Kali, that men think that in their lack of education that they can get some sensual, gross pleasure from matter. So they try to use that exploitation in regards to controlling people, etc. So the caste system has become most corrupted and most debased in many areas. But we should know fully, originally it came from the body of Lord Krishna. Samo dharmastaposotyam santosh shanti ajavam madbhaktischadya satyam brahma prakrityasva imaha. The natural qualities of the brahmanas are control of the mind, control of the senses, austerity, cleanliness, satisfaction, forbearance, simplicity, devotion unto Sri Bhagavan, compassion for the suffering of others, and truthfulness. It doesn't actually say forgiveness, but forgiveness, it says forbearance. but it doesn't directly say forgiveness. But forgiveness is a principal quality. And we see in the example of Jamadagni again, in the ninth canto, the father of Parshuram, he was ready to forgive the Kshatriyas who stole his Kamandenu cow. And he chastised Parshuram when Parshuram goes and kills all those Kshatriyas. He said, actually, you should not do this. Actually, the dharma of the Brahmanas is forgiveness. This is greater than any other quality. This forgiveness is a principal quality of the Brahmanas, is forgiveness. So the devotees also should imbibe this quality, should seek to forgive those who we feel are perhaps personally even attacking us. We should attempt, like Haridas Thakur. He was just immersed when he was being beaten, and he was forgiving them, those Muslim wretches who were beating his body. So we can take that example. But this verse is including many other very beautiful qualities, but it doesn't include, it does include devotion unto Bhagavan, but that's usually what's in the caste Brahman system. That's not what's prominent these days because of the covering of Maya in Kali Yuga. Tejo balam driti soryam titiksho daryayam udama stayam brahmanyam aishwaryam chatra prakritaya strima. The natural qualities of the Kshatriyas are prowess, bodily strength, fortitude, heroism, tolerance, generosity, great perseverance, steadiness, devotion to the Brahmanas, and sovereignty. So this is like the warrior class, so to speak, the protectors of the populace. This is why these originally Kshatriya Dharma is very much described in the Bhagavatam, and especially in the Mahabharata. This Kshatriya Dharma is described sometimes as very fierce because they embody very strict rules and regulations in that Dharma, in that Kshatriya place. And those real Brahmanas and these real Kshatriyas, they are embodied with that Dharma of these principles. It's part of their whole nature. Like Arjun was a Kshatriya, but he was trying to act like a Brahmana. He was trying to do paradharma. It's described in the 18th chapter, right? This paradharma is someone else's dharma, not doing his own swadharma. Krishna is instructing you should do your swadharma. Don't try and do someone else's dharma. You are born to fight. This is your dharma. Don't try to do something else. So this dharma is very much embedded in the individuals. And don't become confused if we're born outside of this varnashram system. 1 minute thinking, oh, I'm a Brahmana, next minute thinking, oh, I'm a Kshatriya, next minute thinking I'm a Vaishya or Sudra, etc. Don't try and put yourself into one of these um, castes, these orders. Just do your service to Krishna in a spontaneous way, and don't try and box yourself in by some definition of what you imagine yourself to be. If you're born in a Brahmin family, then you can feel Brahminical as a Vaishnava, as a devotee. But if you're not born in a Brahmin family or a Kshatriya family or a Vaishya family or a Sudra family, then you just accept that you don't have a particular varna, and just you can perform all the activities. Actually, I can remember when I was in looking after a temple in Australia, one day I'd be putting in fence posts like a Sudra in the fields. Next one, I would be doing classes. Next one, I would be managing. Next one, I'd be making money. I'd be doing all of these things. So it can become, well, who am I? What am I? Am I a Vaishya or a Shudra or a Brahmana or a Kshatriya? What am I? So it's confusing to try to put ourselves, if we're not specifically born in that particular Varna or Ashrama, then just settle for devotion to Krishna as a pure bhakta, as a sadhak. Astikyam dhammanishchacha adambo brahma sevanam otustir ataparvachya vaishya prakritaya strima. The natural qualities of the Vaishnavas are theism, dedication to charity, freedom from pride, service to the Brahmanas, and an insatiable desire to accumulate wealth. When you see the shopkeepers in Vrindavan, you might think, oh, yes, he's a Vaishya. I mean, their insatiable desire to accumulate wealth is very apparent. They'll stay up all hours in the heat or the cold to make a few extra dollars, etc. But a Vaishya, these are the principal qualities. So, sannyasi Vaishnava Das is giving the praman for what he said previously. This is the purpose of these verses here. Shushrushanam dvijagdavam devanam chapa amyaya tatra labdena santosha sudra prakriteastvima. The natural qualities of the Sudras are sincere service to the Devas, Brahmins, and cows, and being satisfied with whatever wealth is obtained by such service. So, in these gradations, it would appear that the Sudra is really in a good position for rendering pure devotional service, having that mentality. It's like the service mood of Govinda Das, the servant of Mahaprabhu, is incredible. I mean, his Brijbasi identity is that it's called a Cheta Saka, C-E-T, Cheta Saka. And he follows behind Krishna all the time in Dasya, in a mood of Dasya Ras. And he's carrying Krishna's bugle, he's carrying sometimes Krishna's flute, his stick, his rope for binding the cows. He never leaves Krishna like a shadow. He's always there, completely dedicated sevak. This is, and in his form as Govinda, he comes and he performs these same totally dedicated services to Mahaprabhu. So he has a sort of an attitude of being like a Sudra, but he's not a Sudra, he's a Vaishnava. This is the point that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya mentions about his identity. Last one. Asocham antyam streyam naistikyam sukha vigraha karma krodas chataryascha sabhavo nityavasyanam. The natural characteristics of those who are in the lowest class and who are estranged from the Varnashram system are uncleanliness, dishonesty, thievery, lack of faith in Vedic Dharma, and the existence of a next life, futile quarrel, lust, anger, and greed for material objects. So if we find these attitudes arising within ourselves, we should be very quickly wanting to purify these lower grade qualities that may come up from our previous sanskars, etc. All of these qualities can be in a single personality. That's what I'm saying. It's not just so exclusive, but in the Varnashram system, they can be defined this way. They can be more cultivated individually that way. You understand? Hmm? If you're born in a Brahmin family, then you're brought up with Brahminical etiquette, and you're more likely to follow that easily as your life, like we see in the life of Srila Bhakti-Vigyan Bharati Maharaj, was born in a very strict Brahmin family. And so all his life, he's very easily able to follow that. Someone else will be more of a Kshatriya spirit. I think Bhakti Vedanta Swami, his father was a Vaishya, right? So that kind of ability to manage, etc., was there within him, which he demonstrated. Of course, he's a Brahmin also, but that quality was there. He managed so much money, etc., very nicely. He didn't waste a single rupee, etc. So, and then what's an example of someone who is born in a lower caste family? But this is what it's determined by, your family lineage. But I'm talking about for many Westerners who are not, or others who are not born in a particular varna or ashram. How are they going to absorb these teachings? We shouldn't try and lock ourselves into a particular one, unless we're naturally developing a Brahminical attitude. We're doing yagyas all day. There are some Western devotees I know, they're not born in Brahminical families, but they're doing yagyas every day. They're really attracted to that seva. So that perhaps would indicate in their previous births they have a sanskar of that, etc. Ahimsa satyam astayam akama krodha lobhata bhuta priya hita cha dharmoyam sarvavanika. The duties for the members of all the varnas are non-violence, truthfulness, abstention from theft, freedom from lust, anger, and greed, and endeavoring for the pleasure and welfare of all living beings. So that's the conclusion. We can appreciate that. That's for everybody. Okay? Everyone in this learned assembly knows the meaning of the Sanskrit shlokas, so I'm not translating them all. I just want to say that the system of Varna and Ashram is the basis of Vaidhi Jivan, life that is carried out in accordance with the religious rules and regulations. It's the basis. It's the basis of it, the platform. We're springboarding off here to understand the purpose, etc., of the rules and regulations in the different varnas and ashrams. Understand? I just want to say that the system of Varna and Ashram is the basis of Vaidhi Jivan, life that is carried out in accordance with religious rules and regulations. The prominence of impiety in a country is measured by the extent to which the Varnashram system is absent there. Very interesting. The Varnashram system is absent, then you see generally the country is completely impious. That means they kill lots of animals, especially cows, which is most of the countries in the Western world. The Varnashram system has never been implemented in the Western world, to my knowledge. When Parikshit Maharaj ruled the planet, there were tribes living in forests in Europe, etc. They weren't civilized, they weren't considered civilized people. And civilization just got less and less when it radiated out of India. So the Varnashram system, it's like, for the last, 300 years, America has been the sort of leading power in the world, but it only has a history of 300 years. So it doesn't go very deep in a sense. So that Varnashram system wasn't present there. I don't know. I mean, the tribal people previously, the native Indians, perhaps they had some semblance, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if there's some semblance of Varnashram system, then it indicates the piety. It's just like the various religions on the planet. If they have a little bit of pure Dharma, Shuddha Dharma within them, then that's their strength. That's probably where they actually manifested from a point of some dharmic aspect they understood, and then it turned into tradition, though, and it just degenerated into a local, perhaps fanatical mindset. You understand? Now let us consider in what sense the words nitya, eternal, and naimittika, circumstantial, have been used in relation to the word karma. If we consider the profound purport of the Shastras, we can say that these two words have not been used to refer to karma in the paramartic sense, which relates to supreme spiritual truth. Rather, they have been used in a routine, vyavaharic, or figurative, opakaric sense. So these terms of nitya and naimittik is what we're discussing now. Now he's established the variegated nature of humanity through these different varnas and ashrams. Now we're considering the nitya and naimittik, which is answering the question of Lahari Maharshai. This question runs through, it's the thread through the whole chapter of what is Nitya-dharma and what is Naimittika-dharma, so we can relinquish it. This is the purpose, this is the objective of Vaishnava Das's words. Properly speaking, Words like Nitya-dharma, Nitya-karma, and Nitya-tattva can only be used to describe the pure spiritual conditions of the jiva. Therefore, in the general use of the word Nitya-karma, the word Nitya is applied to the word karma only in a figurative or attributive sense, because karma in this world is a means to an end and only remotely indicates eternal truth. So it's not really um, eternal karma, but it's been described as if it was in a figurative or attributive sense, but it's not actually. You can turn that off now. Actually, karma is never eternal. Karma and jnana may only be thought of as nitya in an indirect sense when karma is directed towards jnana by means of karma yoga, and when jnana is directed towards bhakti. We discussed this yesterday, the ladder coming from karma, jnana, and bhakti. And I just want to read quickly, I was looking for it yesterday, but I couldn't find it. On the back of my Gurudev's Bhagavad Gita, it's described this very beautifully, this ladder that we're discussing now, from karma to jnana to bhakti. It's a single ladder. This is what we discussed yesterday. If you try and separate it and have like karma yoga, it becomes a separate limb. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it will become very confusing for people because they will think, yes, karma is the purpose of life, or yes, jnana is the purpose of life. If it's separated from the understanding of being a complete continuous ladder, it goes from karma to jnana to moksha, to bhakti. So it's describing here on the back. The subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita is exclusive devotion, which is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. This jewel has been safely kept inside the Gita, inside in the sense that it's the center 6 chapters of the Gita. The Bhakti chapters, those 6 chapters in the center, are protected by Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga on either side. The base of this, which is likened to a treasure chest. The base of this chest is worship of the Supreme Lord by working without attachment. So that's the base of the chest, is Karma Yoga, of one's activities, Nishkarma Karma Yoga. The lid is spiritual realization through transcendental knowledge, Jnana Yoga. And the treasure is devotion to the Supreme Lord. So the treasure is inside the treasure box, but it's supported by Karma Yoga underneath and Jnana Yoga at the sides. This is the nature of the lid. So, in other words, karma and Jnana and bhakti are 3 components of the same essence, the same goal. But if it's separate, if it's separated, then it becomes bewildering. You understand?
Yes.
It's quite simple, really. But this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained yesterday. Anyway. So now, coming back to his question, the Brahmanas chanting of the Brahma Gayatri mantra or Sandhya Vandana is sometimes described as Nitya karma, but we've already just established that karma and Nitya don't really go together because it's a figurative sense, but it doesn't really go together. You can't really have Nitya karma. This is valid in the sense that practices that are remotely directed towards bhakti through physical activities may be termed nitya. If you're chanting those Brahma mantras, those Brahma Gayatri mantras in order to serve the Lord, in order to purify the consciousness so that we can connect with the Lord, then you can take that term nitya karma. But if it's done for any other reason, then that is not nitya, it's naimittic. This is valid in the sense that practices that are remotely directed towards bhakti through physical activities may be termed nitya, but only because they aim at Nitya-dharma. Yes, got it? In reality, They are not nitya. The usage is known as a figurative expression, upachara. Okay? We have to think about these things over time. We hear them now and we begin to meditate on them, but they have relevance in our practice of bhakti to understand these points.
So we can say that if you are having some desire in doing those mantras, then it will become Naimittik-dharma actually.
Yes, if you
And
have material
desire,
desires,
yes.
it's always the distinction between nitya and naimittik,
Naimittik.
material and spiritual. This is what the whole thing is about. What is eternal and what is temporary. This is what Sambandha, Gyan, is only about. What is matter and what is spirit. And there's all different ways to understand this and view it because it runs throughout. This is our continuous error, that we're mistaking something that is material for something that is spiritual. Or we're mistaking something that is spiritual and thinking, oh, that's just material. You might be chanting and be thinking, oh, this is just something to make me feel happy or shanti, and not appreciating its absolute transcendental potency. So in both sides. Actually, the only true nitya karma for the jivas is Krishna prem. This is the point, to have this focus on bhakti. The focus on bhakti is not going to be conclusive in the practice. Then it's not going to be nitya. It's going to be naimittik. If you're going to stop on karma, like Dhruva Maharaj is described as a sakam karma bhakta, he went to the forest to meditate for a particular purpose. He wanted a material desire to be fulfilled. That's called karma yoga or sakam. Sa, that prefix means with. He wanted some desire. And even if you perform nishkam, there's still a fault with nishkam. Nishkam means you're giving up everything for Krishna, but you have the misconception that everything belongs to me in the first place. It's like if you have two people coming to make a donation. One is a Shuddha Bhakta and one is a Nishkam Karma Bhakta. And the Shuddha Bhakta, they both give $100 in the donation box. The Shuddha Karma knows this $100 already belongs to Krishna. He's just giving it back. But the Nishkam Karma thinks, oh, this is mine. He has the identity. He's identifying with his various assets and thinking, I am giving. This is Nishkam Karma, which is a high platform. And in Bhagavad Gita, it proclaims it very beautifully in the first 5-6 chapters. But it's not nitya unless it's being focused on the bhakti sa, on the essence, the goal of devotion. If something is without devotion to the Lord, then it's naimittik.
But in the initial process, it will be Naimittik, like in Dhruv Maharaj case also.
Yes,
But
yes.
after he sees
After
the
he got
Lord,
purified and had
yeah,
darshan,
and
yes,
then the transformation is
yes,
there.
very good. Then the transformation was there, absolutely. Yes, correct, correct. Actually, the only true nitya karma for the jivas is Krishna prem. In ontological terms, this true nitya karma is referred to as unalloyed spiritual cultivation, vishuddha chit anushilanam, or activities directed towards reinstating one's pure transcendental consciousness. He's speaking to Lahiri Mahashai. He's trying to purify him of his Brahminical attachments and his idea that he's performing great service to the Lord by performing these various rituals. If these rituals are not focused with the intention of connecting in transcendence, then they're naimittic. This is what he's working on. He's working on reducing his abhiman and trying to infuse within him the actual true Siddhanta. You understand the whole picture? We have to see the whole picture of the chapter. The physical activities that one will naturally have to adopt to attain this Chid Anushilana are assistants to Nitya Karma. This is like the ladder again. We're performing various karma and we might be distributing foodstuffs, all kinds of things. And this is helping our journey. If our goal is on Raganuga Bhakti, then, for example, performing food for life activities is very beneficial. But if the goal is not Raganuga Bhakti, if the goal is anything except that, then really this is not particularly beneficial for your ultimate welfare. It's just giving you some occupation. It's giving some perhaps material satisfaction. All these things are there, which are helpful. But if your objective is to purify your existence, to actually perform pure Raganuga Bhakti, then it's very supportive. So it has to be always examined carefully according to these precepts. The physical activities that one will naturally have to adopt to attain this Chit Anushilam are assistants to Nitya Karma. So there is no fault in referring to them as Nitya. So in other words, performing like food for life, etc., is, you can say it's Nitya Karma if you are intent on achieving Shuddha Bhakti, if that is your goal. But if it's anything less than that, if you're not clear on that, then it can be Nishkaram Karma Yoga at the best. It hasn't evolved. We should understand this ladder. I think this ladder is the principal point to appreciate here. Karma, Gyan, and Bhakti. We say Anyabilasita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, that Gyan and Karma are eliminated. But they're left with what is the Gyan that is eliminated. It's not Tat Padartha Gyan, it's not knowledge of the self. And it's not Tvam Padartha Gyan, knowledge of Krishna. It's knowledge of the impersonal that is rejected. But if our karma is supportive for bhakti, then it's pure. So there is no fault in referring to them as nitya karma. From the absolute perspective, though, it would be better to refer to such activities as naimittic rather than nitya. Yes, because they are, in effect, naimittic, but they're on the way to nitya. So it's a process. But in the actual journey, that actual portion is still naimittic. But it's pure if its focus is going to be on pleasing our Guru Vargya, because that's the criterion. For example, if you're doing the food for life, if my beloved Gurudev Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj is happy with that activity, if he directed us to do that activity, or Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, if he directed us to do that activity, then it's pure. But we should know, we should be educated in all these things, not just do it blindly. This is the point. This is trying to wake us up to see what is the reality of what we're doing with our lives. And then we can do it in 5th, 6th, 7th gear. Then we can really move along in a very potent, powerful, energetic way. If our Shraddha will become completely confident that we're doing exactly the right thing. There's no hesitancy. It would be better to refer to such activities as naimittic rather than nitya. He's saying to Lahiri Mahashai, your activities of this Sandhya Vandanam are actually naimittic because they're not focused. You don't even know what Shuddha Bhakti is yet. Lahiri Mahashai doesn't really realize what that is yet. He hasn't been educated yet. The divisions of karma into nitya and naimittic are only from a relative viewpoint and not from the absolute spiritual perspective. From the absolute spiritual perspective, nitya is nitya. It means when there's nothing else engaging except direct bringing pleasure to Krishna. From the point of view of the essential nature of things, the Nitya Dharma of the Jivas is unalloyed spiritual practice. Okay, now we have it. Unalloyed spiritual practice. But can we say that food for life, for example, we're using this example because we have our devotee here today who's involved in food for life. So I'm using this example and trying to reconcile it clearly with what's being spoken. It's a very good example because it's a devotional activity. So it's a good example. But what is the essence, the essential nature of things? Nitya-dharma of the jivas is unalloyed spiritual practice. That means my reading, my chanting. These are the priority. If the reading is there, it will remind us of what is the absolute reality. If the reading is absent, then I'll just immediately slip into a karmic kind of mentality. I won't have the crisp, cutting edge of Shastra running through my consciousness. It'll be, what do you call, blurred with an idea of some sort of enjoyment. Everyone loves to give charity. You know, all Christian groups, all kinds of groups give charity. The Sikhs give so much foodstuffs. You know, what is the level of their bhakti in doing it? Everyone loves to go with a table and a hungry place and feed people. There's a great the Christians do it all the time in Africa and different places. It doesn't mean it's bhakti, it's karma yoga. So we're looking to see what is the distinction, and the distinction is quite clear. If the essence is there in the practitioner, if he understands the bhakti sar, what is the purpose? My objective from doing this activity is to become strong enough to perform my nitya activities, which are chanting and reading and my prayers, etc. We're not capable of doing that all the time, so we have to do other activities as well. So, but if these activities are supportive of that, we never miss the Bhagavatam class, for example. We never miss our mala, and we do these other activities simultaneously. The Nitya-dharma of the jivas is unalloyed spiritual practice, and all other types of dharmas are naimittic. This applies to Varnashram dharma, duties prescribed for the castes and orders of human civilization. Astanga Yoga, the eightfold yoga system. Sankhya Gyan, the path of knowledge, involving analytical research into the nature of spirit and matter. And Tapasya, asceticism. These are all naimittic. Varnashram is naimittic. This Tapasya is naimittic. If you're doing just some sort of, austerity, but it's not with the intention, we perform fasting on Ekadashi because we understand from Shastra that is pleasing to the Lord. We fast for His pleasure. We do everything for His pleasure. Everything is for His pleasure. So if we're thinking strongly like that, then our covering of this nishag will become purified very quickly. I'll identify with my spirit more than my gross body. This is the purpose and objective. These are all Naimittic dharma because the jiva would not need these dharmas if he were not bound. That's the answer. Isn't that simple? If you were not bound in this material world, you wouldn't have to go out and do food for life. Would you do food for life if you were a liberated soul? Perhaps you might. But you would do it for a nitya purpose. You would do it because you were knowing that this was bringing pleasure to Krishna. That would be why you were doing it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is amazing. I mean, that's just an amazing sentence. We do all this because we're bound. We need these dharmas if he were not bound. The conditioned state of being bewildered by Maya is itself a circumstantial cause, and the function or duty that is prompted by a circumstantial cause, nimitta, is known as Naimittika-dharma. So anything that we do, like the Sandhya Vandana, the mantras that we chant, the Gayatri mantras, they do not cross the Viraja river. They do not cross into the transcendental world. No one is chanting the Sandhya Vandanam in the spiritual world. They support our reaching that place of the Viraja river, we can say, that crossover into transcendence. They support our devotion to reach that point. But the Maha Mantra is much more powerful. The Maha Mantra goes right across that Viraja river. The Maha Mantra goes right to the lotus feet of the Lord. The Maha Mantra is chanted endlessly in the spiritual world. Golokya Premadana, Harinam Sankirtan. This has come from Goloka Vrindavan. But the mantras, they only take us as far as that river of dividing between matter and spirit. And they're very purifying. And they're very necessary. Because we need to be purified to chant that Maha Mantra. purely. This is our objective. We just need to think about all these things carefully. Therefore, from the absolute spiritual perspective, they are all Naimittika-dharma. That's a powerful paragraph. I'm just going to read that whole paragraph again. We have time because it's very powerful. These are all Naimittika-dharma, dharma, because the jiva would not need these dharmas if he were not bound. The conditioned state of being bewildered by Maya is itself a circumstantial cause. That means a temporary cause. It's not permanent, so it's not nitya. And the function or duty that is prompted by a circumstantial cause, nimitta, is known as Naimittika-dharma. So whatever is prompted from that Mayic platform is going to be Naimittika. It's not transcendental. Therefore, from the absolute spiritual perspective, they are all Naimittika-dharma. Naimittika-dharma includes the superiority of the Brahmanas and their Sandhya Vandana and their acceptance of sannyas after renunciation of all karma. All these activities are highly recommended in the Dharma Shastras, and they are beneficial in consideration of appropriate eligibility, but they still have no standing in relation to Nitya Dharma. Nitya Karma. Now, this verse. Vipradvi Sadguna Yutad. I can't say I don't know what the meter is here. I'm not sure. Vipradvi Sadguna Yatad Aravinda Nava. Padaravinda Vimukhat Swacham Varishtam Manyetad Apita Mano Vachan Bit Arata Pranam Punati Sa Kulam Natu Buramana Manamanaha. My friend Pradumnaji will be blocking his ears at my terrible Sanskrit. Srimad Bhagavatam 7, 9, 10. In my estimation, a bhakta who has taken birth in a family of dog-eaters, but who has dedicated his mind, words, activities, and wealth to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna is superior to the Brahman endowed with all 12 Brahmanical qualities, but who is diverted from the lotus feet of Sri Padmanabha. Such a bhakta, although of lowly birth, can purify himself and his entire family, whereas the Brahmana, who is filled with pride, cannot even purify himself. So that's a very beautiful consideration. We've heard this verse many, many times. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada would quote this many times. So we'll stop here for tonight, and we'll read this verse again tomorrow, and just to reinforce and resonate with it very beautifully. So this is quite a thick section of or dense, we can say, teaching, but it's simply presented if we just simply focus on these distinctions and appreciate that the essence, bhakti sa means essence, so the essence is Shuddha Bhakti. This is the only essence that Bhakti Vinod Thakur is prioritizing all the time, all the time. This is Siddhantic. This is the absolute reality. So Jaiva Dharma ki jai. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koda Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gold Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
Okay, so we're on to page 45 here and 51 in the blue edition, if that's what you have. So yesterday it was a very beautiful discussion about the distinction between karma, what was it, Nitya Dharma and Nitya Karma. And Nitya Karma is referred to as Nitya if it leads to Bhakti. It's all part of the threefold ladder. This was a very, very important point, to know that karma and gyan and bhakti are a single ladder. If we isolate the gyan, then you focus on moksha. If you isolate karma, then you just focus on sense gratification. You understand? It's got to be the whole ladder with the focus on bhakti. We have to know that significantly. Okay, and the last thing we discussed was the point that this Brahminical class is not a seminal identity just because you're born in a Brahmin family. But if you don't behave as a Brahmana, then, and you don't come up to the qualifications of a Brahmana, then you have really no right to call yourself a Brahmana. And this has created the caste system, which we have today, which is like a perverted reflection of the original Varnashram system, because they're not really Brahmanas that are there engaging. It's actually false. Okay. So we'll start off on page 45 with this. I said I would read this verse again. So today, no, he's going to read the verse just now. So we'll read the verse first and then we'll begin to read.
विप्रदात् द्विसदा गुणायुतात् अरविन्दनाभा पदारविन्दा विमुक्ता स्वपचं वरिष्ठं मन्ये तदर्पितमनो वचनेन तीर्था वचने हितार्था प्रणाम पुनति सकुलं न तु भूरिमानाः.
Srimad Bhagavatam 7, 9, 10. In my estimation, a bhakta who has taken birth in a family of dog-eaters, but who has dedicated his mind, words, activities, wealth to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, is superior to a brahmana endowed with all 12 brahminical qualities, but who is diverted from the lotus feet of Sri Padmanabha. Such a bhakta, although of lowly birth, can purify himself and his entire family, whereas the brahmana, who is filled with pride, cannot even purify himself. Now, what is happening here? Lahari Maharshai is like a caste Brahmin. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is portraying him as a caste. He's very expert in languages, he's very proficient in music, etc. And the Vaishnavas are tolerating him because he's chanting Harinam. But he's asked this question, so everything is relating back to this question. Vaishnava Das is answering the question. So the principal point is that this personality needs to be purified of his dharma as a brahmana initially and come to the nitya platform. His naimittic self-respect, etc., of being a brahmana has to be relinquished. That's the title of the chapter. So this is what the whole point is about. Knowing what is Naimittika. This is what we were just saying about rejecting our loyalty to a demonic society. If you've gone through your life trying to better yourself as far as the society is dictating, with various university qualifications or business qualifications, based on a material demonic idea, then it's very hard to actually disengage from that. We're actually covered with that material impression. So I'll read on. The 12 qualities of brahmanas, and Lahari Maharshai is the same. Vaishnava Das is trying to purify that very tough abhiman, that tough identity, that yes, he's a brahmana and he's qualified. Purifying pride is not an easy thing. Guru can do like that. I've seen my guru many times perform operations. He'll make us look into ourselves to purify the obstacles that are holding us back. That's what Guru is able to do, to seek the what is obstructing my progress. And somehow or other, he will just make situations arise that will demonstrate that. It's quite remarkable. The 12 qualities of brahmanas are truthfulness, control of the senses, austerity, freedom from malice, modesty, tolerance, freedom from envy, sacrifice, charity, fortitude, studying the Vedas, and accepting vows. Brahmanas endowed with these 12 qualities are certainly worthy of honor in this world. Of course, so much. However, if a Chandala is a Bhakta, he is superior to Brahmanas who possess these qualities but do not have Krishna Bhakti. So you may have all these qualities, very wonderful qualities. We don't have the principal ingredient of Bhakti. What is the point? It's all on the material platform. It's all on the Naimittic platform. This is the point of all of these teachings. What is Naimittic and what is Nitya? He is superior to the Brahmanas who possess these qualities but who do not have Krishna Bhakti. The purport is that a person who is born a Chandala but who has been purified by the sanskar impressions achieved through sadhu sangha and who is now engaged in the jiva's Nitya-dharma of pure spiritual cultivation is superior to a Brahman who is established in Naimittika-dharma but who abstains from the Nitya-dharma of unalloyed spiritual practice. We have the supreme example or simple example when the Brahman wives wanted to come to Krishna in the forest and the Brahmanas were engaged in a karma yagya, a yagya to benefit, for them to actually reach Swagaloka. That was the purpose of that yagya they were performing. So they couldn't perceive that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was requesting them for some offerings of foodstuffs in the form of the suckers were begging from them. But their wives, they were in tune with what is Nitya Dharma. And as soon as they heard Krishna, they didn't care for their husbands. Immediately they rejected the whole purpose of their cooking that they'd been cooking for the yagya. They immediately rejected that idea and ran to the forest with all their preparations to please Krishna. And remarkably, when they returned, Krishna had purified the hearts of those brahmanas, so they understood that their wives were now worshipable, because the wives were thinking, if we go back, our husbands will beat us, etc. But Krishna assured them, no, actually, they will honor you. And the brahmanas, it's described, they were too afraid of Kamsa's spies. Kamsa's spies were everywhere, and they would see that they were having a yagya to please the Supreme Lord. So fear can sometimes restrict the focus of the educated man. There might be an educated man, but he becomes fearful of society generally, just like in Kamsa's time. So many Brahmins, they had to, and like Hiranyakashipu's time, it's even described that Narad Rishi was supporting Hiranyakashipu. All these personalities were because they had no choice. It's described that Varundev, the ocean, he put up as many jewels on the shores as Hiranyakashipu ordered. And the constellations in the skies were arranged by Hiranyakashipu. And he was, except for Brahma and Shiva, these two were not influenced, but everyone else had to come under that sway. So what to speak of today? Why should we find it so surprising today, when the demons are running the show and they're making everyone dance to their tunes? Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami, was very, very sharp on this. There are so many comments that he makes because he was trying to educate all those young boys and girls who were coming to him at that time and tell them how they've actually been cheated by society generally. And they understood. They all understood that very simply. But today, that particular society is still quite influenced by the material dictates. So that's unfortunate, but the individuals should not be. But who abstains from the Nitya-dharma of unalloyed. Just read that last sentence again, just a second. The purport is that a person who is born a Chandala, but who has been purified by the sanskars impressions achieved through sadhu sangha, and who is now engaged in the jiva's Nitya-dharma of pure spiritual cultivation, is superior to a brahmana who is established in Naimittika-dharma, but who abstains from the Nitya-dharma of unalloyed spiritual practice. So all the time we're reading, remember that Vaishnava Das is answering the question of Lahari Mahashai, which is a very deep question. There are two kinds of human beings in this world: those who are spiritually awake, Udita Vivek. We should try to commit these two types to memory. Udita, we remember the beautiful bhajan, Udila Arana. Udila, like the sun is rising. Udila Arana Purava Bhaje. This beautiful bhajan. So Udila, rising, and Vivek means consciousness, right? Intelligence. So Udita Vivek, rising intelligence. And those who are spiritually unconscious, Anudita Vivek. So Udita Vivek and Anudita Vivek. Most people in this world are spiritually unconscious. Therefore, they believe in the material establishment, etc. They have faith in that because they're not conscious. They can't appreciate what is transcendence. And those who are spiritually awake are rare. Of all those who are spiritually unconscious, the Brahmanas are the best. Of all those who are spiritually unconscious, the Brahmins are the best, and the Brahmins' Nitya karma, such as Sandhya Vandana, is the best of all the duties that are prescribed for the different varnas. So you got that. They are unconscious. They are Anudita Vivek. This is the Brahmanas. Of all those who are spiritually unconscious, the Brahmanas are the best. The Brahmanas are the best of those who are unconscious because they haven't focused on the Nitya Dharma or Nitya Prem. Another name for those who are spiritually awake is Vaishnava. Their behavior will necessarily be different from the behavior of those who are spiritually unconscious. Even so, the behavior of the Vaishnavas is not opposed to the aim of the Smriti rules, which are established in order to regulate people who are spiritually unconscious. So there's rules for the spiritually unconscious, but the conscious, the Udita Vivek, they still follow those same rules of Vidhi. That there's not a problem with that following. These rules are made for the unconscious, but the conscious people will still follow those rules because they're purifying, because they're in our best interest. Like to take liquor, for example, except during a particular type of ceremony, etc. There's a place for that. But the conscious, they have no desire for that at all. You understand? The ultimate aim of all the Shastras is one, and that is to fulfill the spiritual yayatma suprasidati, that satisfaction of the soul serving the Supreme. That is the spiritual, that is the ultimate for the jiva, to understand who is the Supreme and to wake up his dormant service to the Supreme. That's simply the ultimate. That's all. That's all it is. Those who are spiritually unconscious are obliged to remain confined to a particular portion of the stark and rudimentary injunctions of Shastra. Yes, they just stay contained within the prohibitions. They can't move out. Whereas those who are spiritually awake receive the underlying essence of Shastra as an intimate friend. Shastra is our intimate friend. We always take shelter and refuge in Shastra. If ever you're feeling a little bit bewildered or disturbed by anything, you can just pick up a Bhagavad Gita, say a prayer, and open it at any page and it'll speak to you. Srimad Bhagavatam is the same. All these Shastras are our best friends through the whole of life. We can never be without them. These two groups of people perform different activities, but their aim is the same. What is their aim? Their aim is the same. But their aim, what is that aim? That aim is Anand. They want to be happy. They want to be blissful. That's the goal. Everyone wants to be happy. And some people are trying to be happy materially and being frustrated, and some people are trying to be happy spiritually and getting satisfaction from that. Ineligible people may think that the behavior of those who are spiritually awake is opposed to the behavior of people in general. This was Lahari Mahashai's question. Why are the Vaishnavas averse to Sandhya Vandana? That's what his question was. So it's saying here, they're opposed to the behavior of people, but they're not. But in reality, the fundamental aim of these different patterns of behavior is the same. It's the same. From the point of view of those who are spiritually awake, people in general are eligible for instructions regarding Naimittika-dharma. I'll read that again. From the point of view of those who are spiritually awake, people in general are eligible for instructions regarding Naimittika-dharma. However, Naimittika-dharma is in essence incomplete, asampurna, adulterated, mishra, impermanent, achirishti. How do you say that? Achastai. And fit to be rejected. Hai. Naimittika-dharma is not direct spiritual practice. Rather, it consists of temporary material activities that are taken up to attain pure spiritual practice. It's the path. It's not the goal. It's the journey to there.
Madam, from the point of view of those who are spiritually awake, people in general. So does this mean those who are not awake? From the point of view of those who are spiritually awake, people in general are eligible for instructions regarding
The people who are spiritually awake can see that the general people are eligible for spiritual instructions. Those who are awake understand that the general people who are not awake, and they have to discern who is eligible to actually take spiritual instructions. You understand that? I read it again. From the point of view of those who are spiritually awake, people in general are eligible for instruction. So if I'm spiritually awake, then I can see what rules and regulations should apply to people in general to wake them up. This is my understanding of this. Can you think of something else?
Naimittika-dharma is not spiritual instruction.
No. But first of all, they have to perform those dharmas, those karmas. First of all, that's the process. It's like we've already gone through the ladder, karma, and then gyan, and then bhakti. So this is the ladder. So first of all, they should at least not be antyaja, outside of the varnashram system. At least they should be forming some type of rules and regulations. They should be regulating their lives. It's all of this is a gradual process. This reminds me, by the way, a few people have asked me. The other day I was saying that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati mentioned that there were three qualities that the sadhak has to imbibe. This is not quite on the topic, but it's three. I just remembered it as I was speaking. And I didn't say the other two, so a couple of people asked me. So I said the first was, you remember? Patience. Yes, the first was patience. And then the second is forgiveness. And the third is humility. So these three qualities, Bhaktisiddhanta talks about the practicing sadhak. So in particular, patience is necessary because it's going to take time. But that was a side sentence from the text here. Naimittika-dharma is not direct spiritual practice. Rather, it consists of temporary material activities that are taken up to attain pure spiritual practice. Yes, we take these up so that we will become purified to perform bhajan. Hence, it is merely the means to an end. The means is never complete because its function ceases when it has produced the end. Okay? Very simple, very beautiful. Therefore, it is simply a phase in the achievement of the final goal, like liberation, for example. What is beyond liberation? Liberation, yes, the sadhak will become liberated, but that's like a chain. It's a link in a chain. It's not the complete whole. Therefore, it is simply a phase in the achievement of the final goal. Consequently, Naimittika-dharma is never complete, sampurna. For example, now he gets down to the point of Lahari Mahashai's question. For example, a Brahmana's chanting of Sandhya Vandana, like his various other duties, is temporary and subject to specific rules. These activities do not stem from his natural spiritual proclivity. If after performing these prescribed duties for a long time, one obtains the association of Shuddha Bhaktas, Sadhu Sangha, one develops a taste for Harinam. At that time, Sandhya Vandana no longer remains a temporary prescribed duty which is directed towards material rewards, karma, because this is why they're actually involved in it. It's for karma. Harinam is complete spiritual practice, whereas Sandhya Vandana and other such practices are only the means to obtain the principal goal and can never be the complete reality. This is the essence of what he wants to say. If Lahari can understand this one paragraph, then he's purified. What is beyond his mantras? Naimittika-dharma is commendable because it aims at the truth, just like Gyan, or like karma if it's in the proper ladder. If you know when you're performing karma, well, I'm doing this because I want to become inspired, to have more inquisitiveness about the goal. And then Gyan, Kand will manifest, and then I'm performing that to become liberated, but I'm becoming liberated so that I can perform bhakti. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na Sochati na Kanchati. This liberation is described there in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Naimittika-dharma is commendable because it aims at the truth, but it is eventually meant to be abandoned. Haya. Heya. How do you say that? Here. 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 And it is mixed with undesirable results. Mishra. Only spiritual reality is truly beneficial. Although the jiva should relinquish matter and its association, materialism is prominent in Naimittika-dharma. Moreover, Naimittika-dharma produces such an abundance of irrelevant results that the jiva cannot help but get entangled in them. Yeah, if you're performing Gyan, for example, there are so many areas where you can get engrossed in, like astrology, astronomy, it's all these different educational places that you find that you're able to understand all these things with your higher intelligence. But if they're not focusing on bhakti, it's just going to be a waste of time ultimately. For instance, a Brahmana's worship of Ishvara is beneficial, but he is apt to think, now this is important, I am a Brahmana and others are inferior to me. The result of such false egoism is that his worship yields detrimental results, if pride is there. Another example is that an insignificant result of practicing the Eightfold Yoga system is the attainment of mystic powers, which are most inauspicious for the jiva. Today, if someone has a tiny little bit of mystic power, he becomes so proud. You know, many of the devotees have some remnants of this, perhaps from previous births, but if they can become proud of that, then everything is spoiled. We see how our acharyas, they use so much mystical abilities to propagate the mission of Mahaprabhu, just the charisma they could inspire within them. So everyone would think God has arrived. They could inspire that within them. And this is important because they had a mission. They were using it for that purpose. But separate to that, those individuals wouldn't wanted to have cultivated that for their own benefit. It's all connecting with Krishna. Another example is that an insignificant result of practicing the Eightfold Yoga system is the attainment of mystic powers, which are most inauspicious for the jiva. The two unavoidable companions of Naimittika-dharma are mukti, liberation, and bhukti. What is it? Bhukti, mukti, spriha yavat, bischachi, hridi, bharatate. They're dancing like in the heart. Rupa Goswami is talking like that. They have to be expelled. But the jiva must save himself from the clutches of mukti and bhukti if he is to obtain his real objective, which is the culture of pure spiritual reality, chid anushilanam. Consequently, Naimittika-dharma entails much that is contemptible for the jivas. So now Vaishnav Das is really bringing out the hammer. It's like what we spoke about at the beginning today. It's like if we put our faith in material society, etc., it's going to be detrimental for our spiritual progress. Attachments will come. We can see it like that. Naimittika-dharma is impermanent. Achirasti. Chaya. Huh? Achirastai. For it does not apply at all times in all conditions. For instance, a brahmana's priestly duties, a kshatriya's administrative or military duties, and other such circumstantial occupations are brought about by a particular cause, and they cease when the cause ceases. If a Brahman takes birth as a Chandala in his next birth, the Brahminical occupational duties are no longer his swadham. This is a big point. How can they be swadham? We are only concerned with swadham. Like at the very first chapter, we talked about nishag. What is the swadham of the ice, for example? Its swadham is liquid, but it's become ice, hard. We have also become materially conscious, but it's not our swadham. And we're only concerned with that swadham, connecting with that swadham. I am using the word swadham, own duty, in a figurative sense here. The naimittic swadham of the jiva changes in every birth, but his nitya dharma never changes. This is the point. The jiva's true swadham is nitya dharma, whereas naimittic dharma is impermanent. One may ask, what is Vaishnava dharma? The answer is that Vaishnava dharma is the jiva's nitya dharma. When the Vaishnava, the jiva, is liberated from matter, he nurtures Krishna Prem in his pure spiritual form. Before that stage, when the Vaishnava is still materially bound, although spiritually wakened, he only accepts objects and association that are favorable for his spiritual practice. So that's in most of the devotees' cases. We're spiritually bound, we're bound materially, but at least we are looking to the spiritual conclusion. Until he rejects all that as is unfavorable, all that is unfavorable, yeah. Until, it's like what I was saying at the beginning, it's the same thread. Until we reject that which is unfavorable for our bhakti, then we'll be attached to it, hanging on to it. Thus, he never adheres blindly to the rules and prohibitions of the Shastra. He accepts the instructions and prohibitions of the Shastra graciously, but only when they are favorable to his practice of Hari Bhajan. When they are unfavorable, he immediately rejects them. Like there are different injunctions of different types of activities. For example, it doesn't say anywhere in the Shastra that you should perform Dandavat Govardhan Parikrama. There's no saying that. If you're performing it because you like the idea of doing that, and you like being close to Govardhan or doing some misinformed austerity, it's not going to reap particularly beneficial results because it's not described in Shastra. It's a speculative activity. And millions of people are doing this every year because they're not being sufficiently educated. That's just an immediate example I can think of, but there must be many. Yes, if the rules and regulations are unfavorable. For example, if you're sick and the rule is to take a cold bath in the morning, then it's not very wise to follow that. You do what is favorable. Any other examples you can think of? I mean, there must be hundreds. I'm just not able to jump on more. Okay. A Vaishnava is the world's only true friend, and he renders auspiciousness for all jivas of the world. Now I've humbly submitted whatever I had to say today in this assembly of Vaishnavas. Kindly excuse my faults and my any offenses. How amazing. We've just come to exactly 6 o'clock. So I'll just read the one next paragraph and then we'll stop because we've reached the end of this section. So right at the end, I was emphasizing how Vaishnava Das is really hammering the point about the futility of Naimittika-dharma. To begin with, it was something of a soft sell, so to speak. He wasn't coming down strongly, but towards the end, now he's built his premise. He's defined the different adhikars within people. We're not all the same. And all the different varnas and ashrams have to be respected for what they are. And the different types of jivas, the udita vivek and the anudita vivek, have to be taken into consideration. And what are the principles of Shastra? The principles of Shastra is to purify the contaminated consciousness to bring us to service to Krishna. This is the principle. And this yoga ladder of karma, gyan, and bhakti, or bhukti, mukti, bhakti, these three stages, all of this is described. Having spoken thus, Vaishnav Das offers sastang pranam to the assembled Vaishnavas and sat off to one side. By this time the eyes of the Vaishnavas were filled with tears, and they all exclaimed in unison, well done, blessings upon you. The groves of Godram echoed these words in response. The Brahmin singer who had asked the question could see the profound truth of many of the topics presented in the discussion. Some doubts had arisen on certain points, but the seed of faith in Vaishnava Dharma had been significantly nourished in his heart. He folded his hands and said, "O great souls, I am not a Vaishnava." Now he understands he's not a Vaishnava. Before he would have proclaimed himself a Vaishnava. Now he knows what a Vaishnava is, therefore he knows he's not a Vaishnava. But I am becoming a Vaishnava by continuously hearing Hari Nam. If you will kindly instruct me, all my doubts may be dispelled. So we'll stop there for today. So I hope you've all been able to absorb the powerful truths in this chapter. They're very significant. They're very relevant. Jaiva Dharma is building a staircase all the way through. It's building different principles of truth. That's its intention, to evolve our consciousnesses as we read it, to substantiate what is all the time is the same, what is matter and what is spirit, what is matter, and it's going deeper and deeper and deeper into each of these considerations. So Jaiva Dharma ki jai. Anantakoda Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Okay, so halfway down page 48. A Vaishnava is the world's only true friend. He's not going to pat you on the back and flatter you. My Gurudev was very amazing in this area. He never flattered except to a very new person who would come. He would give them some flattering and pattering, he called it. But then very quickly, he would just tell you direct. And that was so inspiring to be around like that. You knew that he would always tell you exactly the reality. He wouldn't try and gloss it over with some sort of material covering or coating. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada had to put a lot of sugar and sweetness and gloss on it because those people who came to him were much more fallen. They had just climbed out of the darkness, so to speak. But Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, he started preaching in 1990. That means 30 years had been there with the Bhagavatam in people's homes, Chaitanya Charitamrita. They had some sanskar. They had accumulated some sukriti, so he could give them much more direct. A Vaishnava is the world's only true friend. I remember one time I was singing, that he asked me to sing it in an assembly, and I sang Gauranga Bolite. And I thought I was singing okay, but at the end of it, he leant forward and said, "You sound like a dying horse." You know, just to make sure, don't get proud of anything, you know. And this is
you get sort of all embarrassed and the rest of it, but it stays the impression there. You know, you're not singing to impress, you're singing to find the place of devotion. You know, these are massive lessons, you know, simple life's lessons, so to speak, that you learn from being with the Mahabhagavat. You know, I can remember the achievement of doing the audio of this Jaiva Dharma and giving it to my Gurudev as a CD. And he just looked at it and just passed it to the side. It wasn't nothing, you know, and then doing a small thing like acting in a drama, he would pat me on the back for days. Oh, you did so good for that. So his vision is not the same as our vision. So try to understand, you know, that we're not trying to make an impression in the world. If you're acting on a stage, a drama, and you're representing someone in a drama, that can be congratulated if you did it properly. But as far as your various accomplishments are concerned, they should be in the channel of devotion, submissive, humble devotion and offering. If you do something nice, then don't become proud about it, because that will immediately create an obstruction for our progress, 100%. A Vaishnava is the world's only true friend because he doesn't do that. He doesn't flatter. And he renders auspiciousness for all jivas of the world. My Gurudev also always said that there were always some pure Vaishnavas on the planet. He said there have to be, otherwise the planet wouldn't be rolling around, it wouldn't be spinning on its orbit. It wouldn't be, you know, floating in space the way it is if there wasn't a pure devotee here. There are always pure devotees on the planet. Always. We just have to seek them out, pray for them, become purified ourselves, and then they'll come. Now I have humbly submitted whatever I had to say today in this assembly of Vaishnavas. Kindly excuse my faults and any offenses. Having spoken thus, Vaishnava Das offered sastang pranam to the assembled Vaishnavas and sat off to one side. By this time, the eyes of the Vaishnavas had filled with tears, and they all exclaimed in unison, "Well done, well done, blessings upon you." The groves of Godrum echoed those words in response. That's interesting. It's like the line we sing this verse, Yam Prabhajantam Anapetim Apeti Krityam. Vyasadeva is running after his son, and only the trees are echoing in response. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is remembering that the groves are echoing in response. A Brahmana singer who had asked the question, could see the profound truth of many of the topics, many, not all of them, so he's still got some purification to go on, presented in the discussion. Some doubts had arisen on certain points, but the seed of faith in Vaishnava Dharma had been significantly nourished in his heart. He folded his hands and said, "O great souls, I am not a Vaishnava, but I am becoming a Vaishnava by continuously hearing Hari Nam. If you will kindly instruct me, all my doubts may be dispelled." That's a beautiful conception. I'm not a Vaishnava, but I'm becoming a Vaishnava. I'm on the way. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to say, we are in the shower. We're getting cleaned for this process. We're in process, accumulating some positive sukriti and sanskar. Sri Prem Das Paramahamsa Babaji Mahashai said kindly, "From time to time, you may associate with Sriman Vaishnava Das." So Prem Das understands, oh, he's started to take shelter of this person. He's seen the link, because this is essential. Without Guru, without loving Guru, without this connection, nothing can transpire. Nothing is going to go forward. That connection must be there to the current. The current is coming from Sachinandan Gaurahari through Rupa Goswami, through all our line. And we want to hook into that line. And by accepting Guru in that line, then we are submitting ourselves to the sometimes discomfort with a pure Guru. It's not necessarily just going to be a wonderful ride. There's all kinds of demands that will go, because you're giving up your independence. This is the reality of the Guru quality is that the Shishya, what can he give to his Guru of most value? He can give his independence to Guru. With full faith and trust, he gives his independence. And that way he can go very fast. Babaji said kindly, from time to time you may associate with Sriman Vaishnavadas. He is a scholar who is learned in all the Shastras. Previously he lived in Varanasi, where he accepted sannyas after studying the Vedanta Shastras deeply. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is the dearmost Lord of our hearts, displayed unlimited mercy and attracted him here to Sri Navadvip. Now he is fully conversant with all the truths of Vaishnava philosophy, and he has also developed profound love for Sri Harinam. So Prem Das, he is encouraging Lahari Mahashai to take shelter of Vaishnava Das. I can remember my Gurudev saying before he left that after he leaves, there will come many new gurus. Many of his shishyas will take that responsibility. And if we see them just as our peers or equals like that and not offering them respect for the tasks that they have taken on, and if we criticize them, my Gurudev said, 1 time is okay, 2 times you'll still be alive, but 3 times, finished. This is what he said. If you criticize, a new guru, so to speak, he's doing his best for his guru. And if he's not doing his best, he'll fall down, so to speak. So it'll become apparent anyway. But if he's doing his service, if he's continuing, then he should be supported by our nourishing words, not condemned for any apparent fault, etc. This is a tricky thing. This is not an easy thing when you're talking about your own God brothers, so to speak. They'll speak directly to you. But this is what my Gurudev said, that if you do 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, finished. You won't tolerate it. The man who had asked the question was named Sri Kalidas Lahari. On hearing Babaji Mahashai's words, he accepted Vaishnava Das within his heart as his guru. Yes, it took Prem Das Babaji's words for him to accept as guru. He thought Vaishnava Das was born in a Brahmin family. He still thinks that. He's still on the Naimittic platform. That's okay. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making a very real presentation here. He doesn't get changed just in an instant. It's not like that. It gets changed within years even. These sanskars have to be washed off by practice. And he accepted the sannyas ashram, so he is fit to instruct a brahmana. Besides, I have witnessed his extraordinary scholarship in the Vaishnava truths. I can learn much about Vaishnava Dharma from him. So he has a desire to hold on to his Brahminical caste, and he has a desire for Gyan. So this is the preliminary, this is the initial stage on the path to Raganuga Bhakti. This hasn't happened yet, but he's on the path. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was painting this picture for us. Thinking in this way, Lahari Mahashai offered Dandavat pranams at Vaishnav Das's lotus feet and said, O great soul, kindly bestow your mercy upon me. Vaishnav Das offered Dandavat pranams to him in return and responded, if you bestow your mercy upon me, I will be fully successful. This is always the mood. This is like at the very beginning, Prem Das Babaji. Sannyasi Thakur, he's offering his obeisances to Prem Das Babaji, and immediately Prem Das Babaji returns them. Remember when he came right in the first chapter? As evening drew near, everyone returned to their respective places. I always think that line is very significant because these are celibate monks, we can say, or renunciants, and they don't have houses or homes. They have places where they stay. They stay in places. So it says very significantly, return to their respective places. Lahari Mahashai's house was in a grove in a secluded area of the village. In the center of the kunj was a natural awning of Madhavi creepers and a raised platform for Tulsi Devi. There were 2 rooms, one on either side of the kunj. The courtyard was enclosed by a trellis of chitta plants, and its beauty was enhanced by many trees such as bael, neem, and other trees bearing fruits and flowers. The owner of that grove was Madhava Das Babaji. So a beautiful grove is depicted. At first, Madhava Das Babaji had been a man of spotless virtue, but immoral association with a woman had blemished his Vaishnava character and was curtailing his practice of bhajan. He was quite impoverished and was meeting his expenses with difficulty by begging at various places and by renting out his extra room, which Lahari Mahashai was occupying. This is an integral part of Naimittika-dharma. Even this deep place of attachment that Madhava Das has for his previous wife is going to obstruct. So this is another aspect. Naimittika-dharma means leaving all that material conception behind. This is my wife. So this is not just a haphazard throw in to the end of the chapter or something. There are many, many lessons in this. That night, Lahari Mahashai's sleep was broken at midnight, and he began to contemplate the essential meaning of what Vaishnav Das Babaji had explained. When he heard a sound outside, as he came out of his room, he saw Madhava Das Babaji standing in the courtyard and speaking with a woman. He's in Babaji Vesh, that means he's renounced women. The woman disappeared as soon as she saw Lahari Mahashai, while Madhava Das stood motionless and embarrassed before him. Babaji, what is the matter? Asked Lahari Mahashai. Lahari Mahashai is not really conversant with the etiquette. He doesn't know the full import of it, but he knows something. It is my ill fate, replied Madhava Das, with tears in his eyes. What more can I say? Alas, to think of what I was in the past and what I have now become. Paramahamsa Babaji Mahashai had so much faith in me. Now I am ashamed to go before him. Please tell me clearly so that I can understand, Lahari Mahashai requested. Madhava Das replied, the woman you just saw was my wife when I was in householder. Shortly after I accepted the renounced life of a Babaji, she went to Sripat Shantipur, where she built a hut and began to reside on the bank of the Ganga. After many days had passed, I happened to go to Sripat Shantipur and saw her there. I asked her, why did you leave your household? She explained, family life no longer appeals to me. Since I am deprived of the service of your feet, I have taken up residence in this tirtha, holy place, and I can sustain myself by begging alms. He made a mistake. This was his mistake. He saw her and he asked her. He should not have spoken to her at all. This is actually the requisite of going into that order, that you have no words, because even just a little bit word and it can be grabbing you. There's no words gone between the husband and wife after the renounced order has taken, none. You can associate with the children. My Gurudev said that is okay, but not with the wife at all, nothing. I returned to Godharam without saying another word to her. After some time, she also came to Godharam and took up residence in a cowherd's house. I used to see her here and there every day, and the more I tried to avoid her, the closer she drew to me. This is a lie. Madhava Das has become illusioned. He went every day, knowing that she was going to be there, and he's saying that he tried to avoid her. No, he wasn't resolute with it. It's his fault. It's got to be. You have to take responsibility for our situation. We can't think it was circumstantial. We can't think it was by circumstances that this happened. This happened for his purification, and he wasn't up to the mark, so to speak, to deal with it. I tried to avoid her. The more I tried to avoid her, the closer she drew to me. Of course, that's the nature. There's an expression in India, in English, treat them mean and keep them keen. It's a gross expression, but it's like when you're a teenager and you're courting women or whatever in the Western world. If you are rejecting somebody, this can make them more enthusiastic. So here he is, he's trying to reject his wife, and she's becoming more attached to him. Now she lives in an ashram that she built here, and she tries to ruin me by coming here late at night. My bad reputation has spread everywhere, and my practice of bhajan has deteriorated sorely through my association with her. I am a disgrace to the family of the servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I am the only person since the time of Chota Haridas's chastisement who deserves punishment. So we know the story of Chotadas, Chotaharidas. Because of their compassion, the Babajis of Sri Godram have not yet chastised me, but they no longer have any faith in me. Something breaks. My Gurudev said, if a sannyas has some fall down, it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. It's gone forever. There's no recompense. You can't reinstate yourself ever again in that ashram. That is false. He said it very categorically to us. There was one sannyasi, he had a fall down, and he told him straight to his face, he said that when it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. You can't, this sannyasi wanted to retain in the ashram. But my Gurudev said, your whole respect, you've broken that very sacred, what do you call, aura practically. And if you crack it, it can't be renewed. It's finished. The only solution is that you give up your body, like Chodahari does. That's the only solution. That's correct behavior. When Lahari Mahashai heard these words, he said, Madhava Das Babaji, please be careful, and returned to his room. Babaji went and sat down on his seat. Lahari Mahashai could not sleep. Again and again he thought, Madhava Das Babaji has fallen down by entering householder life again, after he has formally renounced it. It is not appropriate for me to stay here any longer. Even if it does not lead me into bad association, it will certainly spoil my reputation, so that the pure Vaishnavas will no longer instruct me with confidence. This confidence. How can they instruct someone with confidence when they know he has a blemish and they know he's broken that sacred vow? That sacred vow is like a subtle jewel. And if you break it, you break it. Early the next morning, he went to Pradumna Kunj, greeted Sri Vaishnava Das with due respect, and asked for a place to stay in the Kunj. When Vaishnav Das informed Paramahamsa Babaji Mahashai of this news, Babaji gave instructions that he should be given a place to stay in a kutia on one side of the Kunj. From then on, Lahari Mahashai lived in that kutia and arranged to obtain prasad at the house of a Brahmin who lived nearby. So he's not begging yet. He's arranged still for a Brahmana. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very complete in his description here of showing us the progress of Lahari Mahashai, because Lahari Mahashai is going to go on for a few chapters here. He's going to become eventually Advaita Das, and he's going to be preaching to all different kinds of people. So we're seeing his journey. We saw, first of all, Sannyasi Thakur's journey. Now we're going to see Lahari Mahashai's journey. So this is so instructive to have these directives within story form, so to speak. But this is a big lesson that this last couple of pages have opened out how careful one must be. So we'll end that chapter 3, and tomorrow we'll begin chapter 4, and we'll do some recap on the last 3 chapters. I was hoping, I said before, to cover a chapter per week. So by fortune, last week also we reached the end before it was actually time. So we can have a few breaths to just recap a little bit on the other 3 chapters and make sure we're clear where we're going. Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai,
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Krishna.